What's this about? This is data transformation with Power Query, right? That's the entire course here, the webinar that we are having, right? And my name is Alex. I am a Microsoft Power BI analyst, certified analyst. Sorry, what am I saying? Microsoft Power BI Analyst Associate. I have completed this PL 300 in the for I think 3 years right now, and that's where I am still continuing to have this accreditation with me. I am also an associate trainer of Jamrin Consulting, which is why we are all here, right? So before we get started on anything, I just want to share you a quote by Charlie Munger or Munger. I do not know how to quite pronounce his name. Is to invert and always invert. Why do I say this? It's because in the past, when I first started my journey about 10 years ago as an analyst, I am so fixated on getting something out based on the data that we have to the point that I actually have wasted a lot of time. And that what I learned when I saw this quote is, hey, if I were able to invert the questions and invert the problem statements, it would be much clearer for me. And what Sun Tzu always say is, if you know yourself, you would have won half the battle already. So those are the two big quotes that I always would strive for in my everyday work right now, even as a consultant, to always invert and understand the problem with different angles. Sabiha, there is not much thing to share in the slides here. There's only 4 slides, which I will switch off later once I am done with this first part of the introduction, right? So the agenda of today is warming up the atmosphere. Who am I? Why are we all here today? And who are you? So the who are you here is basically me giving you a short mentee survey. Of course, we don't need to have you putting your names up, but if you do, that would be great. It's basically for me to understand, are you familiar with Excel? Is this the first time you're working with Excel? Is this also something that, are you here just to learn for fun, right? Assuming that you are a chef and then you just heard about data transformation somewhere, and then, hey, I heard about this course somewhere from my friend, and now I'm joining. So it's more about me wanting to understand who 70 people of you who are all of you here, so that I can tailor some of my responses and some of my examples to make it a little bit clearer for everyone here, right? And basics of Power Query is about 20 minutes. I'll share with you what exactly is Power Query, where to access it. Maybe right now I will be focusing on Excel, so we do not have to switch in between Excel and Power BI and get confused with the slightly different user interface that we will see in these two platforms. And then we will go on deeper into understanding what a Power Query editor is. So this is where it's more like you can imagine that you see a car, that car is Excel, and then when you lift the boot up, right, you would see that a lot of things, like I am terrible with cars, I'm terrible with directions, so I hope my examples would make a bit more sense. Those are pretty much the things that is inside that you need to tweak your engine per se, right? And overhaul certain things to make your car perform better. So basically that's what Power Query Editor would do. And when we are talking about the next part is getting data, I'm gonna spend a bit more time here, 60 minutes. Although, yes, I would agree that the sources that I'm sharing today, I'm doing a demo today, would be primarily on Excel and then also on CSV. I have devised, or pretty much, again, throughout my 10 years of playing around with Excel, right? There's only so much that you can play around, to the point that, hey, at right now I'm at the stage of my career where I am going to say, hey, let's just break it and see how far it can go through certain limitations. So that's where I'm going to share with you a little bit of a little sneak peek, right, of the techniques in order for you to get data quickly, in order for you to do certain processes quicker than if you would have just clicked every single steps. Because again, when it comes to programming, you can always just imagine programming is like me walking to a place, or rather traveling from one place to another place. I can always think of taking a bike, I can always think of driving, I can always think of train, for example. What gives me the best approach would highly depend on what would you need to do. So that's where I'm going to spend a bit more time on that, as well as consolidating data. Okay, so when we're going on consolidating data, it's more about what is the difference between append and what's the difference between merge. And when we're talking about merge, there's about 6 to 7 types of merges, which is going to be a little different from what you would have expect if you are familiar with Excel's X lookup, H lookup, V lookup, and index and match, right? Right now, in Power Query, we have a lot more options which are going to be very, very beneficial. So as I walk through you in the consolidation steps, well, the step itself to solve that problem is going to be quite short. But as I'm going through with you on all these types of mergers, I'll share a little bit of experience of what these mergers help me, how they help me to give the reports out on time for my bosses back then, and right now for my client. Then we're gonna go into a sneak peek of the full day course. That's gonna be about 20 minutes. So a spoiler alert, the full day course is going to have a fun case study where we are going to develop a lot of real life examples from the data that I get from Kaggle, right? So, but of course, we're not going to cover that today because that'd be too much for everyone to just sit and understand on what Power Query is all about. And number 7 is on the reflection of my journey as an analyst in the past decade, right? And all of this reflection, I have thankfully gotten my best assistant in the world called ChatGPT to create some questions just in case that you guys may not be thinking of certain questions to ask. I have really prompted GPT to give me 8 areas of questions, and I can relate to those questions because those questions are what I ask myself. I asked my mentors back then. I asked my bosses back then about how would I craft my career to move forward, right? And at the same time, also a little bit about the consulting that I'm doing right now is data consulting. So my client have engaged me to do a few things. One of it is to enhance the advanced analytics layer of the company for them to make better decision, and at the same time also to coach potential talents, right, to be better, because right now they only have about like 3 years of experience, and there is a huge gap in my client's company, and the gap is between the junior to senior. There's a huge gap of knowledge over there, and from senior to manager, there's always also a big gap over there. And since this company is on a lean structure, the gap would be too big to solve because the bosses will immediately ask the junior to help them with something. So that's where I come in, and I do coaching for them as well to train them to think differently, to change the way they think and approach certain problems. And most importantly, also to train them how to say no to bosses uh, in urgent situations, right? So, and of course, I'm going to be opening myself up to any Q&As that you would have on your career-based questions. But of course, if you have any questions throughout this 4-hour course, especially when I am demonstrating to you what Power Query can do, please feel free to just drop me a message in this chat. I will read it every now and then. And also one thing to note, we are going to take a 15 minutes break at 10:30, right? But instead of me talking for 1.5 hours and then only just a 15 minutes break, I tend to prefer to cut, excuse me, I tend to prefer to cut myself off and have a 5 minutes break in between. And then we do a recap before we go on to the next agenda. Sounds good, right? If there is any questions right now, you can feel free to ping me. Otherwise, I will just go ahead, right? And then I will go on to this one right now. It's going to be a bit daunting when we are saying that, oh yeah, we are talking about data analytics and data engineering. To be honest, when I first started off, I am not a data analyst at all. I do not have a data science degree. I have an accounting degree, and my major is in management accounting. So when I first stepped in without training, when I heard about data analytics, data engineering, semantics model, and all sorts of other jargon, data warehouse, for example, and you got to learn SQL. I was like, what are all these things? And to make things simpler, I would equate this into synonymous processes that we can somehow see. I love cooking and I love gardening. So here is the little examples that I can share, and hopefully that would be relating to all of you as well at some part of your life, right? When we're talking about data analytics and engineering, we are talking about the raw layer, jargons like databases. What are databases? And then you would have things like other data sources, right? Sometimes the data source can be structured and unstructured, etc. It's like, okay, that's a bit too much already right there. And then to make things a little bit more complicated for a junior fresh grad, or anyone who has just only started off their career as an analyst, then you would have heard of Microsoft terms, Power Query, and then you have Python, you have Azure Data Factory. If you're in SMEs, for example, in tech startups, you would heard of probably what is that called again? Let me recall. Apache Airflow, and you would have BigQuery scheduler and all this kind of weird jargons. And then you have semantic layer. In semantic layer, you would have heard of Power BI, in Excel, definitely Power Pivot, and in more structured organizations, sometimes you would hear this word called data mart as well. And visuals and reports would be, again, because this is a Microsoft training, we are sticking to Power BI, Excel, but of course that goes beyond. You can talk about ClickView, you can talk about Google Data Studio, which is right now Google Looker, and you also have Tableau and all that sort of stuff. So instead of going too deep on that first, right, for the first 10 minutes, I do not want to scare everybody off. So we are going to talk about cooking. When it comes to raw layer of what cooking is, it's basically gathering your ingredients. Like if you don't have ingredients in your fridge and in your kitchen cabinet, you go out and buy your ingredients. And then the transformation layer is about washing them, reading the recipe, cutting them, choosing the right type of knife, getting the right type of technique to cut certain things. Do you want a julienne? Do you want to dice? Do you want to mince? Do you want to just roughly chop, finely chop? All of these things would eventually, those are all your preparation that you would do, right? And that's similar to what Power Query is doing. That's what's similar to what Python is doing. That's also what's similar to what Azure Data Factory is doing. They are basically doing all your washing, cutting, and prepping before you even hit your wok up and start frying or start doing whatever that you want with your recipes. The semantic layer is on your plating. Plating is, if you're familiar or if you have seen how Gordon Ramsay does it, right? On some of his shows like Hell's Kitchen, for example, they will say that plating matters because plating is the one thing that you need to assemble all those finished goods, right? In a way, for you to then send it out to your customer to enjoy the meal. And that's where your holding temperature is also important. And those are what semantic layers mean. Like, what are the things that need to be there in order for them to serve a good dish for your customers? That's your final presentation. When it comes to gardening, I have a lot of types of plants at home, from succulents ranging all the way up to aquatic plants. So potting media is your raw layer, and of course your plants as well, right? So your potting media would be your raw layer. What kind of, you have got so many medias out there. And when it comes to transformation, is to understand what kind of plants do you need that needs certain kind of media, which then goes into your soil mix. What are the ratio of certain things that you need to put in? So all of these things are your transformation layer to make your plants thrive in your environment. So this is again going back to the same thing in data analytics. What are the transformation processes required in order for you to thrive in your job, in order for your works to be important enough to make decisions in the company? And of course, in the semantics layer, we have pot size for plants. Of course, big plants will need bigger pots, your lighting and placement. And finally, you would have a beautiful presentation of plant exhibition at your house that you can just show people around and amaze them when they come to your house, right? So that's about me right now for a short brief. So I am going to quickly share with you also on a Menti survey that I need to find exactly where. Okay, here it is. I am going to copy this one and share it to you. You can click on that Menti link right there. And that is about me knowing you, right? So the questions, we will go through the questions later, but I am going to go on a presentation mode right now. So please drop in. Wow, that's very quick. That's great. 13 players, 14 players. Come on, let's go, let's go. We have 82 people here. Let's see how many would be here. I'm just gonna wait for probably 2 minutes, right? So now it's 9:24. We are just gonna wait until 9:26 for us to get ready. 36 people. Let's go. 39. Oh, wow. Within half a minute, we are already past that 50% of the entire population online here. That's great. 42 people. Come on, let's go, let's go. You can click on this and play along with us. It doesn't matter if you're doing this in your PC or on phone, because this has got nothing to do with you needing to be paying attention to different areas. So that's fine. After all, nothing beats interacting with all of you virtually right now in Thursday morning. Me with my cup of tea and my cup of coffee. 53 people, a lot of people sending likes. Come on, let's go, let's go. 53. Are we gonna wait? Okay, let's just wait for another minute to see if we have more people coming in. For those who have just joined, I just noticed the ticker just went up from 83 to 84. You can quickly click on that Menti link that I have just shared with you and join this question. This is not at all a task question. This is a question for me to understand who you are, so that I can get more understanding and tailor my explanation to you guys without everybody feeling lost that I again am going too technical. I do have that feedback given to me from time to time. 61 people. All right, I am just going to start right now by entering the quiz. This one, I do not know how to delete this. So look at your device. What role describes you best? We have 15 seconds to answer. So data analyst, finance analyst, data science, BI. BI stands for business intelligence. And number 3, I'm here to learn for fun, meaning to say it's got nothing to do with my 9 to 5 job, but I'm here just to learn something new. All right. So we have about 6, half of people coming here to learn, and data analysts and finance executives or finance functions are here. Some of you, I would need you to press a bit faster, because we only have 15 seconds. You don't need more than 15 seconds to think of what your role is, right? And about some of you here are data scientists and in business intelligence as well. Okay, that's interesting. Let's go to the next part. I have X number of years of working experience And that would be 0 to 2, 3 to 5, and 6 and above. Okay, good. Now all of you are a little bit more gung-ho in um, answering this. Okay, so I don't know if there is still a timer or anything. I'm just gonna wait here for another minute while I sip my tea. It's interesting from this, I can see that most of you are probably from finance, from say, for example, other departments, right? That I believe you guys would also be working a lot in Excel. That's why you're here to learn for fun because it's not part of your KPI. And you are quite senior in your role, which is kind of good. So with the examples that I'm going to share with you throughout this 4-hour journey together, right? You would be able to understand certain pain points, maybe laugh along or cry along together with me, right? With the examples that I'm going to give. Next is I am familiar with Microsoft Excel. So I do not say that I am advanced, even me. I don't call myself advanced. So you rate yourself from beginner all the way to intermediate advanced, meaning to say you know a little bit more than XLOOKUP lah right now, right? So Excel formula, we have pivot table. Pivot table is basically figuring out what columns and rows to drag into what values, etc. And then you have cube functions. Some people would know what cube functions are, some would not. So we will just gonna see. There is a reason why I'm asking. And this the last one will be using cube functions to access data model. Okay, so most of us here would assume that we know a little bit of XLOOKUP, we know a little bit of nesting of formula in Excel, we know how referencing works, absolute referencing versus relative referencing. We know a little bit about advanced techniques that is recently getting a lot of popularity, right, in Microsoft Excel 365 with sort, with unique, with lambda and all that kind of stuff. Okay, maybe lambda is on the advanced side, right? But yeah, most of us would be quite familiar with the things that we would use, or rather we need to use them so that we don't spend a lot of our time churning reports out for our stakeholders. And pivot table is also quite around the center, so that's good. Now, I'm just going to share a little bit about cube functions, right? I use cube function, but not not the way that cube functions are just used to create a pseudo pivot table. I use cube functions to access the data models that I have created, be it in Microsoft Excel Power Pivot or be it in Power BI when I import Power BI web data model into Excel for me to create charts that are a lot more easy to customize. Of course, this is not in today's session. That would be in a data storytelling course, which again, I think Proven will be sharing more about the courses that we have in Jamrin Consulting. Right, okay, so that's about Cube, right? So it's good for me now to understand your familiarity in Excel as well. So now in data modeling, this is interesting. I want to see your response here. You may say, what is that? Or it means you have never heard of it before. That's okay. We are all here to listen and we don't judge, right? What's that? Heard of it, but never did it. I know what it is and I'm using it every day. And number three, these are probably the scientists would be responding to this, or the BI, those 8 of you, right? I create and deploy them to my organizations. So most of you here have heard of it, but never did it. And some of you here are not quite sure of what data modeling is. Trust me, you are not alone. When I first attended Gerald's class 8 years ago, he mentioned about data modeling in my first ever Power BI course. I was looking at him and I was that time too afraid to ask, like, is this a cool new question for me to ask, like, what is data modeling when I was working on something in his class? And then he says, did you change your data model? Oh no, you're changing your data model. And I was just looking, staring quietly on the screen. I don't even dare to look at him. What the heck is data modeling? So I was like, did I break something? Like, am I slowing the entire class down? Like, thankfully, I did not, right? So you're definitely not alone. 7 of you, I can assure you, I have been through that journey with all of you as well. I did not know what data modeling was until 1 year after me working in Power BI. So I didn't know what it was until I read up about it. Then I realized, oh, okay, so that's what data modeling is. And that's what's similar to what I have actually been doing after attending Gerald's class and after reading up a lot. Although they did not say that they are doing data modeling, right? They are actually already something like doing data modeling. So you may actually have already been doing data modeling. It's just that you do not know that is the term for it, and that's fine. All right, so most of you have heard of it, but never did it. And some of you don't know what it is. Only some very, very minority of you know what it is and have been using it and to deploy them. I assume you guys are data engineers and data architects in your organization, and that's great. Okay, on daily average, I think this is more of a question to ask those people who answer that they are mostly in finance, etc. So on daily average, I spend X number of hours on routine Excel tasks. 1 to 2 hours, 3 to 5 hours, 6 and beyond hours. 6 and beyond, I would assume that maybe you are either caught up in between works, right? Or maybe sometimes you have to work on really complicated stuff that you have to put other priorities on hold. So I can understand that. 3 to 5 is quite the average on a day-to-day basis, assuming that those things require you to play around with certain things, especially month-end reporting. My goodness, my team, my finance team basically don't even talk to me when I need their help during the first 3 days. Again, in Heineken, because all of these things we are a listed company, right? So they basically would just say, Alex, I can't talk to you right now. Please talk to me after WD3. So yeah, so it depends on daily average. But I think if we are going to skew this question to on month end daily average, I think the answer would skew towards 3 to 5 or 6 and beyond. Again, because these are what I have seen people writing in the first question just now, that most of you are the execs and analysts, right? So before I continue, I just want to share a story here. When I was in Coke, right? Again, you can look into my resume in CV, my resume in LinkedIn as well. When I was in Coke for the first year, I went in and I did help the Singapore market because Coke Malaysia is basically covering Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. So when I went in there, I was replacing an existing role, and he was working with Singapore market. So I was naturally succeeding his role and support the Singapore market. What I understood back then, again, because Coke is a manufacturing company, and that time it was quite interesting because we just basically moved our warehouse from every single day. We are moving from N-Stack, which is in Nilai, all the way down to Singapore. We have created another warehouse in Johor, if I recall, either that or an island near Singapore, right? So that warehouse requires daily reconciliation. And that's where my predecessor was telling me he had to wake up every day at 7 a.m. to go into SAP. No, not 7, because SAP's information will only be reflected at 8 a.m. So he had to wake up at 8 a.m., or rather get ready and start downloading files at 8 a.m. and then start working on all these things in Excel. Imagine, I believe that at least 30% of you in about 90 of you, right? So maybe 30 people here are definitely quite familiar with how SAP is. So it was definitely stressful when you are downloading a daily report, because that would mean that you have a lot of lines. I kid you not, the PC would hang, right? And you are only having 16 GB PC, and you cannot proceed, especially when you try to open the file and the file is corrupted for some reason. So there again goes another 10 minutes of downloading that huge amount of data. And then you have to add columns in Excel to do certain mappings, because your reporting, your manager and all your stakeholders need all this information aggregated up for them to see this report by 9:30 a.m. That was very stressful. So what I did in my first week there, I basically spent my own homework time, and I slept about 2 to 3 a.m. every day, figuring out how would I have done this better in Excel. How would I have done this better in Power Query, in Excel? So what I do every day when I am finally in that role, when he sort of lepas tangan or let go for me to do, and he can proceed with doing his other jobs in the rotation of his career, is my aim is to complete this within half an hour or maximum half an hour. My aim was to complete it within 15 minutes. So all I did was going back to the query plan, going back to understanding and matching my numbers that I managed to calculate from Power Query and Power Pivot into his manual calculation using Excel. So those are the things that I spent a lot of time working on. And as my role developed, I noticed that together with another person as well. Her name is Kelly. So both of us have managed to save the department about 40 man hours a month from all this manual reporting. And just creating a simple automation flow in Power Query would have saved the time spent for everyone, so that they can help their departments, so that they can help the sales team in Malaysia and the sales team in Singapore a lot better. So that's why I want to know, because knowing all this, right? Let's be optimistic. By the end of this training, you would have the idea that, hey, I can actually cut half of the time, however much that you're putting in here, right? 6 hours, you can cut it half to three. 3 hours, you can cut it half to one. 1 hour, you can cut it half to 30 minutes. That is just very, very conservative, I would say, right? But real life example, I have cut short 4 hours to within 30 minutes itself. So what does it do in Power Query? Is that Power Query is so powerful, hence the name is Power, right? It is so powerful that it helps you to play around on how do you do manual tasks. I would just imagine Power Query like VBA, but on steroids. Of course, you cannot compare VBA steroids with Python, but this is something that everybody can use, right? So this is why now I can finally go into my sharing. Thank you all so much for your great participations. Now let me quickly start sharing my preview. I have already gone through this, so we don't need to go through all of this again. We're just going to go through about the basics of Power Query, talking about what is it, why should we learn it, where is it, and the basic anatomy of it, right? Because a lot of people tend to get scared when they see the anatomy of Power Query editor, which means you click on the advanced editor selection, and then you see all these things, and that's where you start getting scared and you don't know what you're doing, and you're afraid of doing anything because you do not want to break a report. So we are gonna slowly demystify all your fears, so you would have a little bit more confidence by the end of today's session. And of course, if you need more confidence, this is where you come in for our training, where we include a lot more examples at the end. The Power Query editor interface is after the 5 minutes break. right? To get familiar with the Power Query interface, transforming data, what is transforming data, right? So that's basically an ETL part. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. So that's your transformation data. Transformation data can basically be merging cells, doing some lookups here and there, and then delete certain columns. Those are all transformation steps. And all of these steps are recorded in this panel on the left side, which I'll show you later. And that is called the applied steps. So if there, you can basically, if you're familiar with VBA, you can basically go to certain modules and click F5, F5, F5 to check whether your flow is correct or not. So this is quite similar. You don't need to press F5. You just need to click on that step to see if the transformation is done the way that you wanted them to be. Formatting data is basically changing data types and commonly used data types and operators. Module 3 is where we are going to go a little bit deep to getting data from Excel, getting data from text file or CSV. CSV, by the way, stands for comma split values. So sometimes in very, very, very rare occasions, right, when you are working with other, I have gotten that request before from a big company, an airline company, because we are like a platform aggregator for them of that sort. So yeah, that's where I also started my analytics journey, and that's how I met Gerald probably 8 to 10 years ago. I can't remember. Right. And what happened is the client is actually expecting us to give them TSV, and T stands for tab, right? Tab separated values. So there are a few separated values here that you can play around: comma separated values, type separated values, and tag separated values. And all of these are able to be transformed using the exact same step. The only thing that is different is you just need to change what kind of delimiter that you can choose from the dropdown, which I'll share more later. Module 4 is consolidating data. I'm going simple here on merge data. Merge, you can just quickly imagine merge is XLOOKUP or VLOOKUP, right? And of course, like I mentioned earlier, there would be so many types of merges. There are 7 kind of merges, if I recall, 6 or 7, right? And all of these have its different use cases. Sometimes that XLOOKUP and VLOOKUP can't even do. So that's again why I decide to use Power Query, because Power Query is going to make things a lot faster and cleaner for me, because I'm kind of having OCD. I don't like my report, Excel report, to be having too many working columns. I don't like it to be having too many isolated cells with certain values. So I try to remove all of those things in my reports when I create them and share it over to my stakeholders, because obviously nobody in their busy life at work solving so many problems at once need to spend more than 2 seconds understanding how to even navigate your file, right? So for me, my rule of thumb is if you need to spend 2 seconds or more to understand where to go, I have failed my job as an analyst. So this is where I basically have been training myself as well, as I work with these many companies in the past, to sort of enhance my own skills as well. And to be honest, I am not joking to you. I still have my first report of Power BI after attending Gerald's class. And boy, every single time now when I look at that file, I just want to delete it because it is so terrible and so ugly. But I still want to keep it there because that is my first report ever created. And that is what gives me a sense check, right? When I am looking at my first report and I feel disgusted with it, it means that I have learned something. That's how I would view myself. Same goes even right now when I am looking at the report that I've created for my clients a year ago. If I feel it is not good enough right now, it means that I have learned something. So that's my philosophy of pushing myself to learn more things, like buying books like what I have right now, SQL anti-patterns, definitive guide to Power Query, and I have got data analytics using Python, for example, and data storytelling, data, what do you call it? That big book of dashboards and all that kind of stuff. I like reading all of this because it gives me idea on how can I present certain stories to the stakeholders as well. Yes, I agree that we need to be very, very technical when it comes to data modeling, data transformation, because we need our data clean. Because obviously, if we all have heard this term before, garbage in, garbage out, right? If the garbage is in, most of the time it is true, even SAPs or whatever fancy technologies that we have there. There are always bad data in that system because we cannot stop human input, right? So how would we somewhat translate those dirty data, right? So for example, one good example would be a migration of system, and then you are working on a student enrollment program. So you have a student database. In the old system, you have an old name of Vietnam, which is Viet space Nam. And then now this is a new system. Vietnam is without a space and it's a single word. So how would you clean all these things up, right? Is where our job comes in, because we need to transform this data into a compelling story so that the end users will notice that Vietnam with the space and Vietnam without the space is actually one country, right? So that just goes beyond how much things you need to do actually in data transformation. But let me assure you, I understand that some people say, wow, Alex, this is so complicated. And all I need to do is just like 5 minutes cleanup if I just put Control H every single month. Yeah, but if you're doing this every single month, what if you're not around? What if you're on leave? Right? Would you really still want to go through all these processes by bringing your laptop to a country and work on this when you are supposed to be having fun? We don't want that, right? So I normally would motivate myself when I'm free right now. I would rather spend that many number of hours to understand the business logic, and then I would summarize them up and document them in my code. And then after that, my job is done. Yes, of course, I spend a lot of time depending on complexity. Sometimes it's very easy. I can finish an entire flow within 30 minutes. Sometimes that task is extremely difficult that I need an entire week for it. But once the entire struggle is done, right? Things are going to be so much easier from there on. So like what Malays like to say, susah dulu senang kemudian, or Chinese like to say 先苦后甜. That's one of the nice proverbs that I learned in Mandarin. I don't know Mandarin, by the way. So those are the little things that I learned from my friends, right? Bitter first, sweet later. So that's about merging data. Formatting data again is about changing your data structures, replacing values like Vietnam with the space and without the space, and merging Titanic survival data with Titanic passengers. So our examples here would be using more of Titanic database. Again, I think if you guys would go into YouTube learning, for example, a lot of people would be using Titanic dataset. If they are not Titanic, then it would be the sepal dataset. The sepal dataset would be the orchid species, which is definitely not applicable at all for most of you, because all of us here are at least having a business line punya boss lah, in a way, right? The boss don't care about diameters. The boss cares about sales, not the diameter, not the length of the sepal, not the length of the petal, etc. So that's why these cases are created as such. All right, now is 9:51 and we are going to proceed with module 1. All right, let's get started. Finally, Alex have been talking so much and now we are finally going to the first module, right? It's boring from the text, but that's how I normally would prepare my notes, right? So that I can put all my thoughts in there and share with you from experience what everything means. Power Query is Microsoft proprietary language. It is used to also known as M. Officially, it's called mashup. The reason why it's called mashup is very interesting. Later, when we go into get data, you will immediately understand why it's called mashup. Mashup is basically you can mash every single data sources in and create a nice looking report at the end of the day. With all these data reports, right? Sometimes you may have structured data, unstructured data. You may have data coming from SQL. You may have data coming from S/4HANA. You may have data coming from APIs. You may have data coming from what do you call it? A static table that is in your Microsoft SharePoint, for example, right? All of these things can actually be integrated and be packaged together in a data model in Power Query. And that's how amazing it is. And that is why it is called mashup. Mashup is not just a Microsoft Power Query technical language. It is also a technical language that if you go into Azure Data Factory, if you go into data flows or pipelines, you have the option also to select Power Query as a language for you to do your data transformation, apart from, of course, Python and all those kind of fancy terms, right? And yeah, it is also obviously used in Power BI. So sometimes people tend to ask, right? Hey, Alex, I have this complicated data flow that I have in Excel, but now my boss wants this to be in Power BI because he's so excited with what Power BI can do. So now I have to figure out how do I transform everything and put it in. I don't have the time and patience to actually go through every single thing that I have done in Excel and copy them into Power BI. So how would I do that quickly? The answer is very simple. You just go into Power Query in Excel, copy that query, and then go into Power Query in Power BI and paste it, and your entire flow is done. I have done that before, and everybody was like, wow, I did not know it only takes 1 minute. Yeah, now that saves a lot of your time. So that's what it can actually do. It can integrate, and when you copy from one side to the other side, it can work very seamlessly. If you need me to share examples later, we can do that as we go along, right? It is easiest and most accessible ETL tool for everyone because since everyone is here, 93 of you, I assume that all of you here would have at least your personal account with Microsoft 365, right? And that works. And it is an upgrade, like I said, it is an upgrade of VBA if you use VBA for transformation. Now, who should learn Power Query? Oh, sorry, why we should learn? It's because it's free, it's accessible. It is not some obscure language like Ruby, like Haskell, right? I have heard of it, but I honestly don't bother about what language exactly those are and what do they do. It's not an obscure language. So if you need help, you have a lot of forums to go to. Fabric Forum is one of it. Prior to it being called Fabric Forum, I think 2 years ago, it was called Power BI Forum. And again, because Microsoft is going all Fabric right now, right? They all want to be the most connected cloud provider. That's their direction that they're heading to, right? That's where they renamed Power BI Forum to Fabric Forum. You also can follow various blogs and videos from all these MVPs around the world. If you're not sure who to follow, you can follow me in LinkedIn and you can see who am I following and who am I connected to in LinkedIn. These people are MVPs. MVPs basically stand for Microsoft Valuable Player. Gerald, correct me if I'm wrong. I know that you were an MVP for many years. Yeah, but MVPs are, yeah, you can also say that they are most valuable players as well. Yeah, most valuable professional. Thank you, Gerald. Why do they call themselves MVPs in Microsoft? Because they contribute to the society. Video creators, for example, they will be creating so many videos in YouTube to train people to be aware of what Microsoft can do. Gerald, for example, he's attended seminars and all. and all those things are what gives him MVP status as well. That again, because back then when he first started, he was telling me that I have been training for the past 30 years. That time, like, oh yeah, probably I was still in the mother's womb. Around, no, not really. I was just born that time, 30 plus years ago, right? So yeah, we don't have all these big conferences. We obviously don't have Teams. I don't even know if Zoom was very famous back then, right? So these MVPs of the past have to attend webinars, have to attend seminars, right? And conferences to talk and share their knowledge. And all these people are most valuable professionals. But I would still like to call them most valuable players, right? And there are so many Gen AIs that can also assist with this. I've recently just tried this new AI called Perplexity, and I am quite perplexed. Means a bit intrigued, like, wow, it can actually be quite good as well. I have my first good experience with Perplexity. I've been using ChatGPT for quite a while now since it started. I am not on Pro. I am on the cheapskate route. I'm not paying for that yet, right? And it's been serving me quite well. Perplexity is something that you can try as well. Copilot and Gemini is something that I don't quite use, so I'm not really able to comment much on that. But yeah, pretty much how Gen AI works is basically they have access to all the resources around the world on web, right? Their learning models whatsoever. So from there, they would have already gotten all these questions that people get from Stack Overflow back in the good old days. That's like 8 years ago. It was so difficult for me to learn something because I have to spend one entire day sifting through things in Stack Overflow and see what makes sense. But right now, with ChatGPT, Gen AI in general, I can just get my answer within 2 to 3 prompts. If I am prompting it well, I can get it done in one prompt. And that is like what, maximum 1 minute? And I can just copy paste that code and get things running and testing. So it gets more fun learning that way. It is self-serve. You don't need to wait for DEs. Why do I say this? Is because I have a lot of experience in the past. Like I would say things like, I need to get this done, but I need my data engineer to get it done first on his layer, to transform certain things on his layer, because I do not have access to SQL DB, for example. And then after that, that would take so much time. So instead of that, I learned to basically just bypass them and just go to the interface that I have access to, like SAP, and download the data and transform it and give it to my bosses before their due date, without involving the data engineers or the IT team. So those are the little hacks that that can be done throughout using Power Query. It also simplifies many repeated steps like data cleaning, replacing values, merge and append tables. Think of, like I said earlier, think of VLOOKUP, but better. And it helps you save a lot of time. So that's where I mentioned earlier, whatever answer selection that you have for that number of hours that you spend, be confident that it can be slashed by at least half. I know it because I have done it. Not just me, I have also heard a lot of other use cases around the world as well on how Power Query has helped save so much of their time. If you're Excel geek, so here is where I was asking you why. Here was where I was asking you if you know about cube functions, right? You can create custom charts, which I have done, and it's so much better and so much easier to do custom charts in Excel than in Power BI. Because Power BI, for you to do custom charts, you would need to go to Deneb or Vega Lite, things that I'm still learning right now. You don't need any of that. You just need to be good enough in Excel to understand how to do certain custom charts. And you can basically just connect your models that you publish online in Power BI and then after that use it to create charts. And that charts, what's great about those charts is you can embed those charts in your PowerPoint slides, and in your PowerPoint slides then can be automated. You don't need to do a screenshot anymore. One thing I don't like about the reports that I have published in Power BI is, yes, Power BI was the report that is very important for the entire team back then when I was working with Heineken, right? We need that report on Power BI every day for us to make decisions. Whether is it running, whether a stock is running low, whether is it good, is it bad, what kind of media marketing spend do we need to execute immediately to save certain active users from dropping out, for example, right? So all of these things are indeed important for daily decision making. But if I were to take screenshots, which I have tried before, my first year in Heineken, when I took that screenshot and paste it in PowerPoint slide for my director to review every month during our monthly business review, we have this feeling like, number one, your pixel in Power BI may be too small, that when you crop and extend and stretch it in PowerPoint slides may be too blur and it's not easy to be understood. And number two is just not the right visual to show that way, right? And I don't want to spend so much time going back to Power BI, or even worse, creating a separate report in Power BI just for me to take screenshots. So what I did is basically connect Power BI model that I have published in the web to Excel, and I do my chart there. So every month, I'll just need to refresh my model and then click certain drop downs for certain selections. And then after that, save that file, go into PowerPoint and refresh my visuals, and my job is done. Again, that was basically taking the entire team's time from 3 days to half an hour, or rather half a day. Yeah, half a day. So everybody in the team back then felt so much relief after this has been automated, right? Because they can handle more important things before MBR. Tech Geeks, this is also something that I have done before, embedding Python into Power Query. And again, that is why it is called mash up language. You can mash Python's language into Power Query and it can work. Of course, it will have different, how would I say this? You have to do certain workarounds to make this work, but it can work. And I have done that before, right? And other lesser used data sources, right? We have so many data sources. Most primarily for business users would be CSVs, XLS, SLSX, right? But if you are a data scientist or in BI, you may have come across terms like Parquet, XML, JSON, Web API. By the way, fun fact that Web API can also be served as a cheap version of web scraping. If you need to scrape certain information from the web, okay, let me explain what is web scraping. Web scraping is basically an automated process where instead of you going into a website and copy paste the data manually and key it into your Excel, web scraping basically take a screenshot of that interface and transform them into tables for you, therefore again saving time. So that's about web scraping. And you can connect to web APIs as well. And these web APIs are what would eventually help with the connections and whatever not, right? You have Azure Blob. Azure Blob, when I first heard it 2-3 years ago, was like, wow, that sounds very blobby. Right? But blob here means binary large object. Don't have to be too confused about it. Just really, I have tried that before and I was like, hey, that's blob, right? Blob is actually just your folders. Instead of your folders in SharePoint or your folders in your PC local drive, your folder is in Azure, and Azure has this term called blob. So the way you access blob is the exact same way as how you would access certain data in Power Query using, be it your personal PC, your local drive, I mean, or your SharePoint. It's just that. It's the exact same way. And of course, many more, right? And of course, when whatever data set you choose from, there will always be a trade-off. What I mean by this trade-off is an article that I wrote in LinkedIn a few years ago, and I'll show you what it is. This is a data modeling decision, and this is always a trade-off that you have to know. I'm not talking about a trade-off between data storytelling. That is a different trade-off points and matrix that we would not discuss today. But this data modeling decision, we have source, the source that I've just explained to you, Excel, CSV, Parquet, etc. And convenience. Convenience here is part of the foundation. What I mean by that is that convenience of speed, accessing how fast and how easy it is for you to get that data. Do you need IT approval every single time? Do you need to just log in to a certain portal and download, or is it already given to you? Sometimes there are organizations that allow that kind of workflow to happen, that after certain day of midnight, let's say 2 a.m., process the batch of the past day and put that into a folder. SAP can do that. And yes, we have discussed and done that in my previous company as well. So every day when I wake up fresh, I'll just refresh my Power Query. So it is already made convenient for me. Performance is the overall experience of the user in the whole ETL journey. User here refers to you and I, right? Such as the time taken for a data source to load, time taken for data transformation, and time taken for your data model to load. Sometimes if it is too big, this is where you need to decide, hey, can I drop certain things? I don't need so many columns when I actually just need 5 instead of 50, right? So those are the kind of trade-offs that you need to make, and you have to make these things aware to your stakeholders. Let's say, for example, one column has date and time together. But in order for you to make your model work a lot faster, right, you would need to extract only the date component. Then questions that you can ask, which most of the time the answer is yes, is can I only have date instead of date and time? Most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, right? Or maybe more. The answer would be yes, that they only need up to the lowest granularity. Most of the time, again, for business decision makers will be on daily granularity, right? Of course, if you're talking about ad hoc firefighting stuff, you would need to go down to the time granularity, but that's not. In the past 10 years, to be honest with you, I think this time granularity context was only brought up less than 5 times in my entire decade of working with data transformation and helping the business team to make better decisions, be it customer service, be it logistics or whatsoever. Most of the time, the lowest they will go to would be day. And of course, if you're talking about planning, again, if you're in supply chain planning, then you might need to go to what do you call that? Weekly granularity. And then of course, higher up would be your monthly granularity. And here is most likely you would have your monthly granularity in your MBRs, for example, right? So that's the trade-off that I was mentioning about. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these things because this is going to bore everyone off. So I'm just going to quickly open my Excel and then show you. I'm just going to start from a blank workbook and move this, hold on a second, move this away here so I can still be working. So mind you, when I'm looking here, it doesn't mean that I'm ignoring you. My camera is here. My second monitor is here, right? So I would also pay close attention later on when I am looking, if in case you guys have questions in the next I would say 15 minutes or so, right? Because I promised you guys a 15 minutes break before we continue at 10:45, right? So where is Power Query? Is very simple. Power Query is here in the data tab. So when you open this, you will see file, you will see home, you will see insert, page layout, formula, and data. When you click into data, you would see get data. You would see also the common ones here would be from tags, from web. From web is basically web API, the one that I've just explained earlier. From table or range. Table or range are the tables and ranges that are in the current Excel workbook, which is different from you going to get data from file from Excel workbook. That one is from a different workbook, right? And the formula in Power Query is also different. One is Excel.workbook, which is using this. Another one is Excel.current workbook. Oops, sorry, I just clicked it by accident. And then you have from picture, from recent sources, etc. So one fun fact about from picture, right? I never used it because at first I thought it would translate a handwritten table into an automated form, well, properly formatted table in Power Query. But after testing this with Gerald a while ago, we just realized that doesn't work anymore. So we are not going to go here. Again, most of the time, Excel, tables and ranges, etc. And then if you want to refresh your queries or whatsoever, you can refresh all. That would be here. And to check your queries in connections, it will be here, right? By clicking this little button here, queries in connections. And of course, right now you will see this is being shown up on your left-hand side. It will be empty because there is nothing loaded yet. But that's about how you do things right now in Excel 365, right? If you're using Excel 2013 right now in your PC, you may have to go to Microsoft.com and ask and check out how would you enable the share, sorry, not share, the Power Query and Power Pivot wizards, because it would be a separate, a different UI compared to the current 365 that Microsoft is already pushing. Okay, and of course, we will explore Power Pivot later once we have successfully closed and load our data for data modeling. I'm not going to explain much about Power BI, but if you want later, we can do that, right? During our 15 minutes break, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to just drop it down in this chat so I can attend to it after we come back from our rest. Next thing is going to the Power Query Editor Basic Anatomy. So again, here I'm just going to drag my file here to just tell you what Power Query Editor looks like. So when you click on the Advanced Editor later, you will see this weird looking color sorted programming language. And this is M, right? And here is where you need to be aware that Power Query Basic Anatomy, I'm not going to go in too much details about how and where certain things are, so you don't have to worry. We just need to know one thing. Everything is wrapped in let in expression. You have let, and then after all your codes are here, and in, your final step would be outside of in. So that is basically what and how to read Power Query code if you step into here and do certain changes. But of course, this will be covered in intermediate and advanced classes. In this preview, we are just going to quickly share you what it looks like in this interface, and that's all, right? So the let-in expression is similar to Excel formula that you have to start with equals, and then after you write your formula, press enter. That's exactly the same. If in Sofu explained that if in 365 Excel Online, it seems like different. Okay, I am not familiar with Power Query Online because I tend to prefer working on it in my desktop. But I believe it might be a little different. I can agree with you. But I believe most of the features there are not too far different from the offline or the desktop version. So you can still follow along certain things as you click around and to explore around, right? But like I said, this is a demo session, so you would not be having any training materials to follow along. So you can just sit back and do your own exploration later. So if you have any questions throughout this session full, you can always drop me a message here and I'll try to answer them as fast as I can. And of course, now in the advanced course, right, we are talking about the nested let-in operations. So nested let-in is quite similar to how you do multiple nestings of formula in Excel, right? And here would be your tips. So before we get started, right, I just want to share with you some tips here, which I will also do that later in the Power Query, which is this. Maybe I'll just do a split screen now and just say, for example, get data, whatever it is. Okay, maybe it's book one, whatever. I don't know what data this is. Okay, yeah, this is fine. Okay, you guys don't know what this store ID is, so this I am not breaching any NDAs from my client and get myself into a lawsuit. So what's fun here is you can come here. Wait, let me this here data source settings. So sorry, not here. Here options and settings, and then you would see your query options and query options here, right? You would see data load. For me, what I do in Excel, this doesn't have in Power BI. So this is only in Excel. I would actually specify custom default load setting and disable load to worksheet. If you go in right now, you would see load to worksheet is ticked. I will disable it. What does it mean? It means that I am just loading into somewhere in my file, but I am not loading a physical table. Why do I need that? Later in my demo, you will understand more as we go through in module 3 and module 4, is because I do not want to bloat my file up. So like, again, back to the example of the SAP 8 in the morning story, right? The end user only wants to see the pivot table that you created and sent to them by 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. in the morning. They don't need to see your working tab. They don't need to see how big, how gigantic, how many MBs or GBs your SAP working file is. Because yes, I needed to also give them the link to download that worksheet, to download that workbook. So what happens here is I don't need them to see the raw data. So I don't want to load this into the worksheet, right? I also don't want to load everything that I have done in the data model, because in the data model, I only want to load certain things. So again, if you have attended Gerald's course, GRC 101, about introduction of Power BI, right? You have the selection to enable or disable certain loads in your Power Query. So this is where I would not want to do that, because when I load physical tables, be it onto worksheet or onto data model, your file size will expand. And I try my best not to bloat this up too much. Again, most of the time, I understand as finance analysts and data analysts, your requirement laptop is only 16 GB, right? So you do not want to overload too many physical things in a small room. Like I have a small office in my house here, right? And if I am loading in so many things, it'll be so difficult for me to access certain things like my pencil. I will need more than like 1 second to get my pencil out because I have so much clutter. So that's why I do not want to load either to worksheet or to data model. I will only load this once it has finally been into when I press the close and load function. I'll explain to you later what that means later, as in the next 2 minutes, right? And fast data load, I will click yes. And this one, they will say by enabling the fast data load option, your query will take less time to load, but Excel may be unresponsive for long periods. So this one, I would normally tell myself, okay, this is good. If the query is complicated and I cannot run in Excel, I'm just gonna, if I have nothing else better to do, I'm just gonna go for a coffee break or a smoke break or whatever break it is. Because by the time I come back in 15, 30 minutes down the road, assuming cross fingers, none of the pipeline breaks, then it would be ready for me to do my next step, which is copy pasting certain screenshots, certain charts, or certain pivot tables for my end users, and send this out to them via email. Right? I will click fast data load, but this means that you cannot work with Excel. Excel will sort of like hang for a while. So that is the best time for you to do whatever that you want to do apart from working in Excel. Right? So that's about it, and I'll click OK. So now, since, again, let me just repeat myself here, right? If I come to File, Options and Settings, and Query Settings, in Query Options, I am coming over to Data Load. I am deselecting Load to Worksheet, Load to Data Model. Means it's not loaded to anywhere, but somewhere, right? I will click OK, close and load, right? Now you see what happens in Excel. It says connection only, meaning you cannot access this, you cannot do anything with it. But if you want, you can then change by right-clicking it, go to Load To, and Load To is where you can see this import data table coming up. You can load to a table, you can load to a pivot report table, pivot chart, only create connection. That is what it is right now by default. And I want it that way, right? So if I want to create a table, I'll just click Table, Existing Worksheet. I will just say, okay, this A1 is fine. And I also have this option to add to data model. I'm not going to go into, maybe I'll just explain to you what it is. I'll click OK. And then you will see now it is loading data, creating relationships, and 29,000 rows are loaded. So this is what it means by when you are loading into worksheet. If I don't want to, I can just, again, say only create connections, meaning no table already, and then add this data to data model. So do you want to continue? I said yes. They are just going to delete the whole table, and my file will be much lighter because 29,000 rows are not in my worksheet, but it is in my workbook. Where is it? Is here. You will see this little new thing called Power Pivot coming up, right? It is up on your ribbon here. When you have loaded this, again, let me repeat, load to, right? Only create connection. Add this data to data model. I click OK. It will take a while, and you will see Power Pivot here. When you come in and click on Power Pivot, you will see all sorts of things, to be honest with you. I'm very, very honest. I have never touched anything else except for this green cube that I always would be molesting in. So when I click into this, I am coming up into Power Pivot View in Excel. So here is where, if I am working with data modeling, I'll click on Diagram View. And in Diagram View is where I can create relationships. I can also do other things like adding new columns, for example, like add columns, right? So this is quite similar to DAX calculated columns. But again, we're not going there in this. I'm just showing you the possibilities, right, that you can work with just in Excel itself. Because before Power BI was born, 10 years ago, maybe, right? I can't remember. Power Pivot and Power Query was there for a much longer period of time. I think it was since 2006, and then rebranded into 2013. And then after that, around that same time is where Power BI comes in. Power BI is basically Power Pivot and Power Query and Excel, all these three packed together, make it more chunky for business users to use, because they wanted to fight with Tableau back then. Tableau was so big, Power BI was so small. I was there because Power BI back then was only 3 years old. The suffering that I had to go through in Gerald's class, and all those OGs, Power BI OGs, would definitely relate to me. If you guys do not have the experience, blessed are you, because right now Power BI is so much easier to use than 10 years ago, right? So all of these are packed in to Power BI. So all these things happen in Excel first before Power BI was created. So yeah, that's why you can copy paste queries into Power BI for them to work. All right, so I have 4 more minutes. Let's see what else can I cover before we all go for a short break. So I have shared with you the tips, right? and what do you need to do, etc., etc. So we are pretty much done. So this one is something that I will also be copy pasting it here. You can pin this somewhere. You can save it in your sticky notes or anywhere else. This is a very handy string of code when you are working with CSV document. I understand that there are the automated way of doing CSV, but I do not like to do that at all because it creates too much steps. It creates too much. I would say it even goes in to create custom function. And when I first looked into that, I got scared because I don't even know what custom function is, and Excel has, or rather Power Query has already created something for me, and I don't know what it is. I have learned through my 10 years of experience that I don't like to have things that I don't understand in my code, because when things break, I would be going crazy figuring out what is it. So I don't use that normal route everybody is using. So I would use this one instead later in our second or third module, right? I think it'd be the third module of how and why would this be preferred. And I'll share a lot more of the story later. Okay, so just a sneak peek in these last 2 minutes before everyone goes to break. I'm going into the Power Query interface later on to get familiar with it. I can also share you this link, right? So if you want to understand more, you can always click onto that link, and that link basically tells you everything. I mean, everything that you need to know about Power Query interface. Of course, that is too much for you to read, and that's why we have already condensed everything in 4 hours, and of course, a little bit of my personal stories as well for you to relate, right? And then we're going on to transforming data, the applied steps, formatting data, basic types of data types and operator. So you have these little icons here, which I'll share you more about what they mean, and then a little bit about mRudiment. So I was talking to you about the let in operator. So I'm just gonna tell you what it is and how it sort of work, right? Before you go in directly to the ETL part, because that's gonna be a bit too much of a shock if you don't understand the basics first. Of course, like if you want to cook a spicy meal, you need to understand that what gives spice, right? You need your chili, you need your herbs like cinnamon, etc., to create that spice. So you need to understand what ingredients are spicy, what ingredients are not, etc., etc. So this is going to be very, very quick. I'm not going to go in too much detail here, right? I will also be explaining to you why certain times you would have a hashtag followed by double quotes and sometimes you don't later on as well. Like what I shared with you here, right? On this part up right here. Why is it sometimes you would have your double quotes? Sometimes you don't have double quotes. So I'll explain more on that later, right? And then, yeah, that's basically module 2. All right, so we are going to proceed with module 3 of getting data, right? So getting data, like I said earlier, I will split this into 2 parts. One is to get data from Excel. Another one is to get data from CSV. And I'm just going to demo to you by opening up my Excel. And I already have my modules here. I don't need that anymore. All right. And I'm going to split my screen and bring it a little smaller. And this one, I don't need this at all. Right. So from CSV, right, I have adventure work sales data. Okay. Okay, wait, let me check. Fu, will you explain later on when data load to worksheet or add data to data model? Later, how can be used in data model? Yes, I will be sharing that, but I will not be covering too much about data modeling per se. It will be more about going into Power Pivot in order for you to do your pivot table for your analysis, right? So here is Excel. And that's what I've explained to you earlier. How would we get to Power Query is by clicking on data, get data, right now my data source is Excel. But I always like to tell people before we go into any works whatsoever, the first thing we need to do is to always inspect the data. Now I'm just going to open this up. In this, I have 4 sheets: dim customer, dim product, dim sales territory, fact, internet sales. So I here, what's interesting is I have so many columns. Let me just see. I have 29 columns. Customer key, geography key, customer alternate key, blah, blah, blah. So many of these things, right? All the way from what language is it? From you have English language, Spanish and French. You have address, etc., and distance. This is the last cell, last column in column AD. So no, sorry, AC is the last cell. Commute distance. So right now in this example, what we are going to do is to load AdventureWorks customer dataset. And in this data set that we have, it is in Excel that you can see over here. And in this Excel, you have 4 different sheets. And in these 4 different sheets is something quite similar that you can also see that you actually need only one sheet from your workbook, right? That's given by someone else because their output is your input for you to process with whatever that you need to. And you will need to select what sheet for you to process with your transformation. So that's why this workbook is created in such a way to mimic your real life examples as well. I am just going to take dim customer, which is the first sheet. And what I'm going to do here, right, is I am going to merge these 3 things. I'm just going to give you a yellow color so that you can visually see, since there is no files given to you. I'm just going to merge these 3 things: first name, middle name, and last name. Sorry, yeah, first name, middle name, and last name into a single column and call that column as full name. And then I am also going to change my yearly income into number because this is all formatted into currency. I know that this is you have some, therefore this is numeric, but I will also be very careful when I am inspecting my data. So this is again something about transformation, something about changing data types that you need to be aware of, because more often than not, a data type may look like number to our naked eyes, right? But when we actually go in and see this is actually typed text, because, for example, birth date here is definitely typed text. How would I know? Can someone tell me how would I know that birth date is typed text instead of typed date? I'm just going to give 5 seconds. And the answer starts with A. Okay, I'll just tell you. The alignment, yes, exactly, Alvin, you are right. On the left side, because text is always aligned to the left, date and number is always aligned to the right. And I know from here, this is definitely type text. So this is something that I need to change as well, because, hey, I want to create an H column. How do I do that? Is where I will show you more later, right? So here is where your Excel knowledge comes in very, very handy when you quickly glance through this data without even going into Power Query yet. Of course, this is provided that this is a training model. You only have 30 columns, and how many rows is this? 18,000. It's a very small data set that you can eyeball. But in big data sets that I have worked on, like 500,000 rows, 40 million rows. Obviously, I do not have the time to check this. Is there a limit of data line when import as when loaded? Big will have error message. No, and this is why Power Query will come in as your savior for data analytics if you are not using Power BI. Because when, however big your data is, obviously when we're talking about huge data above 1 million rows, it is always a good approach to save this in CSV, because CSV does not have limitations of rows, right? It's a text file, right? CSV is a text file. So this one is where you have 5 million rows. You can load that into your Power Query and it can still load. And of course, again, answering Fu's question, if I am loading 1 million rows, or sorry, let me just give you a dramatic example, 5 million rows of data into the worksheet, they will give you an error. Yeah, thanks, Gerald. It's one, yeah, exactly that. I cannot remember little numbers. So anything beyond that limit, right? Let me just, like I said, 5 million rows of records. When you load that into your worksheet, they will tell you that Excel limit has reached and you are only seeing up to 1,048,567 rows in the worksheet. But the model will still remain at 5 million, right? So this is where I normally choose not to load this into worksheet unless I really need to, which I'll tell you why do I need to as I go along. Right, so that's one. Another one, I have this thing called income. Where is my income? There is an income here, if I remember very clearly. Okay, yearly income. Yeah, yearly income, right? So I want to also create a yearly income bin for me to know my customers. This is very common, right? Sometimes you have got so many ranges of numbers, right? So many ranges of revenues broken down by certain SKUs. And you want to know, sorry, SKU may be too low. A little higher will be your brand category, right? How much sales each brand category gets. And these are the things that you can use binning. And binning is where you create a computed column. Computed column is a language used by adding column inside Power Query, whereas calculated column is a language used when you are working with DAX. I have my personal philosophy on this. Anything relating ETL related matters, right? That I need to create certain logics. I will not use DAX because DAX is data analytics expression. I know Gerald may disagree with me because he is a DAX guru, but on Power BI level, on Power Query level, I will try my best to push everything into Power Query and not to create too much hard-coded formula in my DAX table because that is going to be very difficult to maintain. I do not know, should I maintain it in DAX or should I maintain it in Power Query? So for me, I do not have much brain power like Gerald. So for me, I will make things simple. Everything that requires data modeling or changing data behaviors. Okay, let me just not use the word data model. I'll use the word data behaviors. Anything relating to data behaviors, I will go to Power Query. Yes, it's going to take longer, but I'm kind of used to it already, lah, you can see. Right, I'm also going to create each column. I am going to remove unwanted columns. So what I'm just going to share with you here in this chat is by sharing you a draft query plan. And this draft query plan is extremely helpful when you are working on complicated projects. I'm just gonna stop talking and send this first, right? So whatever that I have shared with you, load only dim customer. Dim stands for dimension, by the way, and merge first name, middle name, last name into a single column and the column will be called full name. I will change yearly income to type number if it's not already. I will create yearly income bins of below 50,000, below 100,000 and above 100,000. I will create sort order for yearly income bin. I will create each column. I will remove unwanted columns. So this query plan helps you as a BA, business analyst, when you are talking to your business stakeholders. This is very important, by the way. Every time when I see finance and they throw me some files that they are very familiar with, and this is my first time seeing, right? I will need to understand what are the columns that you need. What are the columns that you would depend on to create your Excel formula on? What are the columns that you don't need? But of course, when they don't need it, they'll just leave it there. But for me, I have the choice to just remove them in Power Query. Now, with all that being said, right, let's get into it. I'm just going to save this one. I'm just going to close this file and I'm going to start. I am coming to get data. When I click get data from file, I have a lot of choices to take in. And here is where I will see why is it called mashup again. You have got Excel, Excel workbook from text from SML, etc. Whatever that I've explained to you earlier. So I'm going to go with from Excel workbook. I'm going to click this, it's going to load, and I'm just going to wait. And here, Karen, I'll answer your question later. From here, I will see my personal drive, right? Because this is my personal laptop and this is, I'm not connecting through SharePoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm coming to my module from Excel. I'm going to double click this. I'm going to click on AdventureWorks Sales Data, right? Once I am here, I will click import. While this is importing, I'm going to answer Karen's question. What is the best practice? Should we remove the unwanted columns first before transforming or vice versa? My take, this is my opinion. Other MVPs may have their different opinions. My take is to do all this cleanup last. Why? Because sometimes I may need it and I would have to go back up and then after that remove certain columns again. So it's more like a general answer to you, right, Karen? It's more about understanding what is the best practice. Sometimes if the data is so small, you can just immediately select. Like right now, you already know your query plan. You can immediately remove unwanted columns because the requirements are extremely clear. Sometimes the things that you do at work, right? This happened to me. Yes, exactly just yesterday. I removed certain columns and then later on I realized that I need the column. So I have to go back to the Power Query editor. I have to remove what I don't want to, I have to remove what I don't want to be deleted. So it really depends. And the best answer to this is what makes you work better and faster. If it reduces your cognitive load meaning to see, wow, see so many things I cannot think. My brain jam. I have that on a daily basis, by the way. So whatever reduces your cognitive load and makes you work effectively, do that. Right? In this example, 30 columns only, ma. So it's okay for us to drop those columns that we don't need all in one go. Again, because I don't also, to answer your question, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So to answer your question as to why I will only choose to drop columns at the last step is because I don't want to drop columns multiple times in the entire script. It is basically lebih lah in a way. Like I chop my garlic ready and then I get my wok ready. I fry the garlic. Then I need to chop fish now. After chop fish, throw in and then after that I need to go back and chop chili. I don't want to do that. I want to get all my chopping done one shot and then start my fire and then start cooking so that my dish don't get burnt in the end of the day. So it's the exact same logic. You have to think of that process flow, what needs to happen first, and from there you would have your answer. There is no best practice per se. It really depends based on your example, based on your work that you have at hand. Julia, if I have daily new records on sales data, how do we refresh the data? I would assume, Julia, your question is if today is 10 and tomorrow is 11 and you need to combine these together in 10 and 11. Is that the records on the 10th and the records on the 11th and the records on the 12th? Am I right, Julia? Is that what you're trying to say? Okay, I'm just gonna let you explain a little bit more on that, and I will just go ahead with this training first while you type, yeah? So I am going back to the query plan, right? I am first going to use only dim customer. So I will only choose dim customer. I don't care about the rest. I will only choose dim customer. Instead of load, I do not want load. I never do load. Because I want to know what I am doing before I load this. I will click transform and then I'm answering Julia's question. What I mean is today I load in this table and tomorrow I have new data. So how does this get refreshed? This will not get refreshed because this connection is using Excel workbook. If you want these types of different files being refreshed on a daily basis, you will have to use folder approach, which if I have time today, I will try to cover that for you to get an idea. But the answer is from folder, okay, not from Excel. Because if you're doing it from Excel, you have to append them manually, which is gonna be a nightmare if you have 12. Okay, if you have 365 because you're doing this daily, you're gonna quit tomorrow, man. That's too much. Okay, there is a step for that, don't worry. So okay, now going back to this, when I click transform, you see that there are now source and then there is now navigation. Now what does that mean? When I click on source, I would see things like all these sheets, and then after that I have xlnm.filter database. Why? And this is a defined name, meaning to say, this one has been translated into a table that you can filter. Like basically you control T that range, then that's basically becoming a table, right? So there is a difference between table and ranges. Ranges is basically your normal Excel that you think that is table, but that's actually range. When you control T and then you have table 1 as your name, and then select, yes, I have a header, that becomes a table to be recognized in Excel's brain. Okay. So this one we can safely ignore because I have already chosen sheet instead of this defined name, right? And this is also hidden, so I don't even bother about this. Sheet, right? And then this is navigation. So from here, you can see that it is now source equals item. I'm just going to paste it here because I think I am having problem with my zooming tool just now. That's why the whole PC crashed. Okay, so I am seeing source item equals dim customer. Let me just go back here, right? Item equals dim customer, okay? And then after that, kind is not the good-hearted kindness. It is the type, and in Excel, Power Query is called kind, right? And the kind is sheet. So that's why it's like, again, imagine that this is a VLOOKUP navigation that I want dim customer and sheet, boom, I get this table, right? But right now, I have no header because this is a range. Again, if it is a table, then it is automatically going to promote header. You have 2 steps on this, which I will share you the second step because the second step is more beginner friendly. The second step is called promote headers, where I will come to the home. Hold on, I always have a problem figuring out where exactly it is. In transform. Oh, I cannot find it. Okay, never mind. I'm just going to share with you my first approach then. Okay, in this column, right? Again, I'm going to share this with you in this chat. You don't have to worry too much about Excel.workbook, blah, blah, blah. This is my path. I don't care about the path. You would see that null is here and then there is true. I am just going to delete null. I will click OK. And then after that, when I come to navigation, I will see this being populated as my customer, as my headers already. And yes, thank you, Hasno. It is used first row as headers, which I think, yes, my God, it's so big and I cannot see it. Okay, let me just repeat and go back to the original setup, right? When I come to navigation, I will see here, exactly here, in transform, in table, use first row as header, just click yes, and this automatically promotes it. The code is something generated in Power Query already called table.promote headers. Your table name, promote all scalar equals true, means everything is promoted as header, right? So that is step number 2, which is easier and more beginner friendly, and I'll show you why. Because if I am removing null here, right? Okay, maybe before that, I want you to take a look at this. You see the source here, right? You can click on the source and change your file path, assuming that your file path has changed in the future, right? So this approach, promote header later, it will not break anything. But if I am gatal tangan, because I am advanced, I think I know what I'm doing. So okay, I delete this. I click yes. If you want to change your data source that looks exactly the same but a different sheet, right? you cannot navigate anymore. So now you have to spend your time to have to copy paste your file path here. So it's option one. If you know what you're doing, by all means go ahead with it. You are saving one step. Option two would be the safest option by promote headers by clicking that button. So I'm going to restore the default setting by including the null over here. Oops. By including the null over here and promote headers. Now, promote headers, some may have detected data sources, some may not have. For my case, I have defaulted it not to detect data source, and I would choose to change my own data source. How do I do this very quickly? It's super simple, right? I will click Control A, click here, click Control A, select everything, exactly like Excel. And then in transform, right? You will see data type any and detect data type. I am just going with what I call a stupid approach first now. Detect data type, throw everything in. They will automatically detect everything for me. So now is where I will come in to check in my requirements. Right? In my requirements, I say that I need to merge first name, middle name, last name as single column. So first name, middle name, last name as ABCs. ABCs are type text. So you can also change it like this. You can see the number is decimal, dollar is currency, 123 is whole number, percentage, date, time, date, da 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 da. You can go ahead we can go all the way that we want. So this is type text. Sometimes I would use the word string because as a programmer, we tend to use the word string rather than the word text, right? So this is type text, and type text merged together with all type text, it will not return error. I can create my full name, no problem. Change yearly income to number. So now I will go in and check if my yearly income is number. Yes, it is number because it says it is 1, 2, 3. So I don't need to do that step anymore. And then I will have create yearly income bin below 50, below 100, above 100, and then create sort order. This one, very simple. In Excel also, you all know how to do this. It is called using your if or if-else function in Excel. In Power Query, it is called if then else. If you're familiar with SQL, it is case when and, right? Sorry, case when else and, right? So it's quite similar. And one thing about Power Query is it is case sensitive, meaning to say if your if is capital letter, Power Query will not read that as a function, and it will throw you an error. This language, again, that's why I send you the link just now to Microsoft Learn, right? Because sometimes you are not exactly sure whether is it capital or not capital, got dot or no dot. That's where you can go and check the function out and copy that function's casing and make sure that you are doing it right. Right? So here, Diana says if then else or if else. If else is Python, if then else is Power Query. So you would have conditions which later you will see from the yearly income bin already. If this, then that. Else, if this, then that. So that's where I say that is if then else. Then the loop keeps going on until the exit statement. Okay? You will understand more as we go along. So, and then we also have to create each column and remove unwanted column, right? So that's my draft query plan. So right now, what I'm gonna do is, again, because I just explained to Karen just now, right? We already know that this is only 30 rows and the data size is not that big. And you see this ABC 1, 2, 3 means they don't know. Power Query cannot detect because there's nothing here. Everything is null. And we know that we don't need this, right? So we can just delete lah. So how do we do that? Is we come home, right beside file in home, choose column. If you click on this, you can go to or choose column. I want to choose column. Alternatively, you can just click this big thing select all columns. You can see this, right? I will basically just deselect everything because I only need to select a few, right? And I also can change. I can also say that, okay, I want name, right? Then boom, everything came out. First name, middle name, last name, selected, done. And then I remove my filter. Next thing is income. So, oops, sorry, I was too fast. Next thing was my income, yearly income. Yes, I want to have my yearly income. Age, I want my age. So I have to have my birth date to calculate from their birth date until now. Very, very common, especially if you are working in insurance agencies, that you need to determine your mortality rate of your clients, right? For example, you need to do your law of large numbers kind of analysis. What are the risk categories of your clients that you have in your database? Or if you work in government, you always ask for IC number, and you need to determine whether or not are they eligible for certain, what do you call it, certain initiatives given by the government. I can share this with you because when I was in EY, my project was with the Ministry of Finance. I was part of Laksana. So yeah, this was part of our things that we need to do. I wouldn't call it headache because we already know how to solve it, right? So these are the only things that I need. I don't need anything else, just for this example, right? So I click OK. It's done. Birth date, just now it was left aligned. But when I click detect auto, right? Auto detect data types, it is immediately right aligned. Because Excel is smart enough, or rather Power Query engine is smart enough to understand that this is a type date that I can relate to. The format is something that the program, the engine, knows how to relate to, right? In this case, just now, I think it was year, month, date, but then they swapped it around already because they know the format is consistent. Therefore, they can proceed with this. Okay, and the good thing is they can proceed without breaking it. All right, so now we are done with the first step, right? We remove unwanted columns because we are already familiar with what do we need and what we don't need. Therefore, reducing our cognitive load. Instead of 30 columns, we are only seeing 5 columns. So much more chill now, right? Are we able to change data format to month, day, year? Yes, you can. And when you do that, in your change type, there is one parameter that you would need to write here, right? Before the comma sign, before the close parentheses sign, you can have a comma, and then you can type in your culture code. Again, all of these things is in your what do you call it? In your Microsoft Learn web page. You can put in EN-MY for English Malaysia format, close double quote, and then click enter. Okay, sorry, I just yeah, okay, now that should work. Let's see. Now is it changing? Maybe not. So that means this would be already day, month, year. But if month, day, year, I think it is ENUS. Let me try. I believe it is ENUS. It is not showing up here. Did it change? I think it changed. It was 10.6 and then now it's 6.10, something along that line. But to be sure, you always can go back to that Power Query link that I shared with you. Just find the date formats and the culture codes. The important thing here, what I'm writing here, right, is actually the culture code, right? So I'm just going to put in here for you to reference culture code, that you have a lot of culture codes in all over the world that you can choose from. So I'm just going to delete this to not confuse everyone else right now, and click OK. And then I have removed other columns. Now, let's get back to the business. The first requirement is done. We have loaded it and we have also removed unwanted column. Next is to merge first name, middle name, last name into a single column. And you would have a choice. Oops, sorry. You would have a choice, right? With all these 3 columns. The choice is either you merge as a new column or you merge on the column itself, meaning to say you don't have to spend another step later to remove 3 columns lah. Of course, I don't want to, like I said, I do not want to go back to the chopping board after I start the fire up, right? So what I do is I will click on transform, not add column. Add column can also do that, and it is called merge column. Let me just show you. If I merge column, separator, I am just gonna select space lor. New column, merge. Maybe I'm just gonna say this new column full name, right? As an example only, and I'm gonna delete the step. I'm gonna click on go, and then I will have this one here. If that happens, then I will have to come back here and delete. That is already extra steps. I don't want that. I already removed columns. I don't want to remove another column. So I'm going to delete this. What I'm going to do is select this tree. Okay. How do I select this? Is exactly how you would do in Excel by pressing your shift button and then select your ranges that you need to, right? And then you come to transform in here, transform, you have merge column as well. So when you are in transform, right? It will transform and show you, or rather they will supersede your existing data before transformation. That's why it's called transform instead of adding column. So I click on merge column. My separator is going to be space, and I am going to put this, because the requirement says full name, I am going to type in full name. Right? I'm going to click OK. There, you don't have the other three columns. I may be a bit too fast. Let me just repeat. Earlier on, after I have removed other columns, I have 5 columns, right? So now the next requirement is to merge the first name, middle name, and last name into a single column and call that column as name. When I am doing that, I do not want to create an additional column to merge them and delete the existing original 3 columns, because I don't need that. So what I do is I am going to transform here. In transform, I will come and select merge column. After I select these 3 columns, right? I come to merge column, right? And then after that, I select the delimiter as space, and then it is created here. Very nice, right? But of course, what happens is that you would have null over here, right? You see null, null, null. So you would have ugly little spaces here. One quick tip on how to check this, right? You may be like, so difficult to see. How to see? Very easy. You can click on the cell, right? And then you can see the value right at the bottom here. Again, I'm so sorry that I cannot zoom in for you. I do not want this to crash again. You can see that there is this ugly double space over here. Again, because something plus null plus something, when you merge them together, that now becomes an additional space. I don't want that. And I want to clean this, because why do I have double space and then one more a single space? It's not consistent. Our job as data analysts is to make things consistent for easy consumption, right? So I'm just going to come over here, right click. This is not in my query plan, but as I notice that there are changes that I need to do, I will do it. A query plan is just a plan. It's just a map, right? I want to go from my house in PJ to, say, for example, Ipoh, right? On my way up to Ipoh, I will need to fill up my petrol. I don't need to put in my query plan. I don't need to put in my map. But as soon as I pass some certain highway, there is this R&R, and I know I need to add my petrol in, else my car will get jammed over there in the middle of the highway, and that's not a good experience at all, right? So that's what you need to do. You need to think on the spot and create. So here, what I'm going to do is come over to full name, right click, not right click. Right click is where you have all these functions, features. Click on transform. You can then choose lowercase, uppercase, capitalize, whatever. I want to trim. When I trim, let's see what happens to Julio Ruiz in row number 6. Okay, why is it still there? Oh, there will be some cases that you cannot, unfortunately, right? But in some cases, you would have been able to clean. Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I'm just going to replace values. Let's see what happens. If I space, I replace with a single space and click OK. Now this works. You notice, right? Let me go do it again. Number 3, Ruben Torres, Christy Zhu, Elizabeth Johnson, Julio Ruiz. All of these have space, right? And in this space, when you cannot trim for whatever reason, sometimes I really cannot understand why Power Query cannot trim. Maybe because it is null and it doesn't perceive it as a space, I'm not sure. But another approach is to replace value space to a single space, and it is all done. Okay. So now that we are done with this, and this full name column looks clean, right? I am going to create a yearly income bin from yearly income column. So here is where, to answer Diana's question, is it if then else or if else? Definitely the if else, if God, right? If you need to have is if else, it will be else space if. If else is not the if else without spacing is not a function recognized in Power Query. So you have to be careful if you are playing around with other programming languages like me. I understand sometimes people get confused, even me also sometimes. So here, I am going to add column now. Why? Because I am creating another column called yearly income bin. So I'm going to add column. I'm going to add custom column. In this custom column, you will see this new thing appear, and I am going to change this new column name. Instead of custom, I am going to change this into yearly income bin. And here is where I start writing my formula. If you don't know where to, where or how to refer the documentation, I say you can click on this and we'll again show you the Microsoft Learn platform where you can understand more. Okay, so again, going back to the requirement is create yearly income bin less than 50,000, less than 100,000, more than 100,000. Okay, so there's only three parameters. I'm going to start with say if, right? If I am going to say that my yearly income, because my yearly income is my column that I want to set this condition. So I'm going to double click on yearly income. And notice that this one will have a square bracket that denotes a field accessor. Let me just write this down over here as well. Denotes field accessor. Okay, so whatever thing that has a square bracket is accessing that field. All right. If yearly income is less than 50,000, next argument is then I'm gonna put this as text because binning is usually text lah, right? Then I'm gonna put this as below 50,000. Or maybe I just want to make it short, 50K. Then, you know, in Excel, you would normally be nesting before if else come out. You have to nest if bracket, and then after that, the if argument is false, then you have to open another if function, right? This one, you don't need to. You would then say else. If, again, I'm lazy, I'm just going to copy this whole thing. Here, right? Yearly income less than 100,000. Then it is going to be less than 100K. Again, because we are only working with three parameters and we know that they have to fall into either or. How do I know? Is also to see the data profiling, which I will share with you later on. Bear with me for a while. The data profiling here that you see here, if you notice this little green dot, green bar on the top here, this is your profiling. If all greens means there is no null value. If there is null value, then it will be gray. If it is red, then there are errors there. I will show you later what I mean by that. Then 100K. So the end statement is else exceed ready, right? So I'm going to put more than 100. Oops, what is this? Okay, I'm going to put more than 100K. Okay. And then I am going to click OK. Now, when I click OK, this is created. Okay. I am assuming that you guys can follow this because it is quite familiar to how you do this in Excel as well. Then I realized, it's not quite consistent. Here got space, and then after that, here don't have space. Okay, fine, I put a space here.
right? And I click OK again. So now it looks nicer, right? And then now I also have a choice. Do I want to change type here? I can. I can say type text. Then another change type function is created already. Change type 1. I don't want that. I hate this actually. And I know the argument is type text, right? So I'm just going to delete this one. This is how I do my query quite quick, yeah. And I'm gonna say here by putting a comma, and then when you put a comma, you will see that here now is called column type as nullable type. What does it mean? It means in this table dot add column function, you can actually change the type, the data type itself immediately in that line of code, right? So I'm just going to put in here type text. Oops, small t, right? And I'm going to click OK. And you see from 1, 2, 3, just now it has changed to ABC. Means this has already been changed to text. What I mean by Power Query is a case-sensitive language is when you say, for example, tersilap lah, you do like this, right? And I click, it will show you expression.syntax error, something is wrong. Then you know that these are not the recognized characters. Apa ni? I type too fast. These are not the recognized characters, right? So T is T is lowercase. Okay. So if you're talking about integer int64, the I is capital. Again, all of these data types are in the Microsoft documentation. This is not a hidden knowledge, so don't worry. Okay. So now this is done. What else do we need to do? Create sort order for yearly income bin, right? So the sort order, logically speaking, would be from smallest to biggest, which is in ascending order. We have already created a table.add column here, right? By yearly income. Now I want to sort the yearly income bin because if I don't, which I'll show you later, if I don't create that sort order, it will be everywhere. Especially if you're working with date data, you will have your April coming first because A is alphabetical order, April first, and then followed by, I cannot remember, it's just weird. Okay. So what I do next is again in the add column ribbon, right? I'm not changing anything here. I am coming here again to custom column. In this custom column now, I am going to say income bin sort. Why am I writing this in this way? I will explain to you later why I got no space, etc. I will explain this to you. So just hang on there for a while until we're done, and we are going to do a small recap before I proceed to calculate the age based on the birthday. Right? Income bin sort again. So we already know if income bin, right? We only have 3 equals. Now is equals, right? Just now was less than, more than, etc. Now equals less than 50K. Then, oops, sorry, I just realized this is not correct. Less than 50K, then 1. Else, if yearly income bin equals less than 100K, then 2. Yeah, this is my sort order. Else 3. That is my end of my statement. Again, because there is no null values, which I'll explain. How do I know that there is no null values? I'll click OK. And then again, this is in ABC 1, 2, 3. I don't want this. I hate this. So I will come here. After I click go, OK, I will come here before the closing parentheses. I will add a comma and I'll put here type number. And close my parentheses, look at this, ABC 1, 2, 3. As soon as I click the execute button, it will change to 1.2. That is how you save your time. Now, going back to how do I know what is what? Do I have nulls or not? Let me quickly go here in promoted. Okay. Navigation, and then this. Right? You will see over here in column 4 versus column 3 that you have green and then a lot of gray. Gray, like I said, means null, empty. So here is where you can see valid, error, empty. So these are your profiling that you can choose, that you can see, right? So again, I'm just going to put here data profile. Green is valid, means okay. Red is error. Error usually is because of your data error that you are putting in something else, which I'll show you also later just for you to understand and see clearly. Now, gray it is now or blank, right? This is how you inspect your data quickly. So when I come over here after change data type, right? Everything is green. Okay, everything is green. Now let me just show you what will happen if I change something. Okay, this is good lah. This is ABC, right? Type text. If I change this to decimal number, I'll just say add new step because I do not want to break it. So you see, the green earlier on was green, right? And then now it has changed to red. And everything now is showing error. You don't know what is the error? You click outside the error. Don't click here. Don't show that hand, no hand. Click here, and then you will see the error message. Data format error, we could not convert to number. Details 1-2 miles. This is not a number format. So this is how you will know that there are errors in your data when you're doing transformation. That is number one. Number two, why do I tend to create columns that do not have spaces? It's because I have been doing programming for a very long time. So I'm quite used to this kind of thing already. Also because when I want to rename certain things, for example, right, it is much easier for me to just rename it like that rather than if I have like 4 or 5 words with spaces, it's quite difficult. And this would take a toll on my mental focus. So I tend to write everything the way I do. Best practices, I will cover this in the full course when you sign up with us, right? So this is what I do. And another thing that I would also do is I will rename certain things. I don't like the word replace value. What does it mean by replace value? I can fool, just give me a while. Replace value, I want to rename them, right? I will just right click and rename. Replace value, I will say replace, I will just, yeah, replace spaces. So I know that this is on full name, right? Edit custom one. If I have 10 transformation steps, I'll have until edit custom 9. I don't want that because when I debug this, I will be super confused. Edit custom, this is yearly bin. I am just going to rename them and type here yearly income, income bin. Edit custom one, this is your income bin sort. I am going to right click, rename, and call this as income bin sort. Okay, so now the code makes more sense. Fu, to answer your question, how can I see the data profile? Is on this top right corner here, let me just take a screenshot and then send it over to you in the chat, right? And then I will annotate this little dot so that you can see better. It's right up here, right? You can see that it is all green. Now I think I can easily enlarge this. Oops. Apa ni saya? Okay. You can see that all these are green, 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 meaning there are no problem with this. If there are problems, they will change to red. What if, Alex, sometimes I see there as green, red, and gray in one column profile. Am I doing something wrong? Answer is maybe. Answer is maybe not. What does it mean? Is because remember just now, right? When I come over here, when I click on this, I will see the percentage, valid, error, and empty. So when you see different, it's like 100% stack column chart in a way of these 3 different colors means X number of percent is valid, X number of percent is error, X number of percent is empty. And yes, exactly, Gerald, thank you. You can also go to view column distribution to get the view permanently displayed. That one, let me just show you now. We go to view and here I select column distribution. and I can get the view permanently displayed. This is column distribution. Column profiling, I will show you this is what it looks like. When I enable, this is what it looks like. I'm going to see a lot more information here. You may need this, you may not need this. So to be safe, let's just disable first lah. Because my colleague in Heineken, when we do this together, right, you will feel very how to say, you may lose patience because it loads slow because you enable column profile. And column quality also is where you can see that the percentages here, right? Like what Gerald said, if you hover your mouse over the green bar, it's temporary. Sometimes very hard for your mouse to be stable. Exactly. My mouse is a trainer mouse cursor. That's why it's big. Sometimes it's small. It's so hard to see. You can select column quality here for you to see these dots, right? So it's up to you. It's up here in view, right? And then you can select column quality. You can select column profile if you want to, but for this case, I don't want to do it. I would also actually do monospace as well. Monospace basically changing this into a programmer's interface lah. But then not needed right now because, okay, why do I need this? Can someone guess why do I need a monospace? I'm just going to give you guys like 3 seconds to give me a guess. Why do I need a monospace, right? Is because sometimes when I am dealing with numbers with fixed ranges, I need to identify by eyeballing sometimes, right? I need to identify, are they the same length? Of course, this is a stupid approach, some would say, but I would rather waste my span, don't say waste my time. I'd rather spend my time to understand what is going on than assuming that my code works. I don't trust myself that bad. That's why I learned coding on my own, right? And yeah, from here, I can immediately see my documentation, my logic. In this case, we can choose not to enable monospace. That is perfectly fine because we are not working with anything length sensitive. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Fu. Then now we are going in a little bit in technical depth on creating age group. How do we do that? We have a day, right? Now I want to create an age group, and the function is basically very easy. We create age group. How do you know? Hey, what year are you born in? 93. I'm 93. So I'm like, I cannot remember how old am I now? Probably 32 or 31 or 33. Cannot remember. And then, some people, as we grow older, we tend to ask each other, what year are you born instead of how old are you? Because, I mean, like me, I don't remember my age. I only know that I'm born in 93, right? So this way, I don't need to know the date and the exact date because I'm not too precise about what day am I born, how many years, how many days, how many months have I been alive. Because most of the time, again, like I said, business context, we don't need to go to that extent unless you're validating something very precise. Like my Laksana project, it has to be 18 and above on that date of application. So if you are not 18 on that date of application, say for example, you're 17 years old, 11 months, you are rejected. That is how it really depends on that requirement of your business stakeholders, right? Now, we have year, and simple formula is basically this year minus the year that you are born. Of course, I can choose 2025 lah. But if it is now 2026, I do not want to go back and revisit this file because probably by the end of this training, 1 year later, you are a senior and you are dealing with a lot more data reports. You do not really want to go into your old files and check. Trust me, because you will sometimes vomit blood. I have done that. I'm like, oh my God, Alex, why did you do this? Like me talking to my younger self like a year ago, why did you do this, right? So we don't want to do that. So we try to read things as much as we can. And the function is called year. How do we get year from today? In Excel, it's called year bracket, today bracket. In Power Query, that's not the case. The today in today is called datetime dot local now. I'm just gonna share this with you first and tell you what it looks like. Okay, it's called datetime.local now. I am just gonna open up a new step, not going to break anything. I am just going to say datetime.time.local now and close my bracket. And I'm gonna execute and I'm gonna see this. This is a default timestamp in the system in Power BI or Power Query. In short, the engine. Okay, if you want to know what's the engine's name, it's called the Vertipack engine. Okay, the engine will record the date as such. You cannot change this, but you can nest your formula. Like how we nest formulas in Excel, we can change the behavior here. How do we do that? Is by using the year function. Year function in Excel, simple, year, that's it. In Power Query, the function is called date.year. Open bracket, close bracket, and I am expected to see 2025 only. There you go. Okay, so this is how you tend to tweak around, right? To see what works and what doesn't. Now that you know it works, fine, that's great. I can close, I can copy this. I'm very lazy. I copy a lot of my codes and then only go back and edit some things or another because I know this works already. Sometimes I get too excited, I delete this, and then when I open up a new in that create column function, I get nervous and I got error. So what works, I copy. And then after that, I delete this because I don't need it anymore. Now I come to add column again. By the way, add column is one of the most frequently used button in Power Query because you need to set conditions. You can do it there. You want to create calculated computed columns. You can do it there. A minus B equals C. You need C to be there. Like right now, I need to create a new column without removing my birth date because, well, maybe sometimes we want to send them a birthday note to tell them that we care because this is a customer database, right? All these little reminders for marketing team, if you guys are here, you will really appreciate this. I mean, not you, but your customers will really appreciate you having them send a reminder. Like LHDN, they will send you a letter every year to your house and say happy birthday. Please pay tax. Right? So here is where I am going to then create custom column and I will call this one as age. Bigger number first minus smaller number. Yes? So I'm gonna do this. Okay, I got double equal sometimes. So I will just remove them. And then after that, I am going to minus this. If I minus this, it may be like not apple to apple comparison lah. Because if I do that, I may end up with weird numbers. Let me just show you here. It's also giving an error. We cannot apply operator to type number and type date, right? Because date.year gives you a date, a number input. 2025 is a number. It's not type date anymore, right? So number and date cannot. Just as how number and text cannot. Like A plus 5 cannot. We are not doing algebra here. So it will give you an error. A plus 5 in Excel, in Power Query is equals error, not equals A plus 5. We're not doing algebra. So to solve this problem, right, we need to have another one that returns the year as number. And we already discussed this earlier. It's called date.year. So we are going to put here date.year and wrap this around and then close the bracket, right? How do you know whether the bracket is closed properly or not? You see, when my what do you call it? My text cursor, right? Not this yellow one, but you see this, it will change, it will wrap this one, right? This little one will wrap with this. Let me show you again. If I'm here, you will see that over here is also highlighted, meaning to say the entire structure, the sentence is complete and it will not give you error. Now I click OK. I have my numbers here. Why is it error? This one is something Microsoft is a bit slow in improving its process. Why is it error? Because earlier got error. How to remove this? Simple. Go back to the previous step and come back, and then there's no more error. This is the step that I learned from Gerald 8 to 10 years ago, and Microsoft still hasn't solved this. So if you are sure that your formula is correct, be okay. Just go back to whatever previous step and come back. Then your error will be gone. Again, I have ABC 1, 2, 3. Age is a number. I want this to be number. So before the last parenthesis here, I am going to put comma and again put type number and click OK and job is done. Okay, so this is how it works when you are getting data from Excel. You have your data query plan, and in your query plan, we have already discovered how to load only dim customer. Yes, because this one we only select item equals dim customer, which is basically your sheet name, right? And then after you promoted headers, you change your types automatically. You don't even need to bother about this. And then you remove other columns that you don't need by coming over to your home tab, choose columns, and then from there you can already select whatever columns that you want to see. And then what we did next was merge columns and create this new column called full name. Replace spaces, basically replacing values with double space into a single space to make the full name looks nicer to the eyes to see, right? Yearly income bin, we have also created this by using your if then else function, right? So again, I'm sharing you that you have your if, you have your then, you have your else, and then you want to loop again. Then you have your if, then else, right? So this is always the process. Julia, I'm so sorry that I'm too fast. Thank you for letting me know. I will go slow later. Let me just finish through everything here first, yeah? And then we also created income bin sort. Income bin sort is where I am creating it as type number, where I have conditionally formatted it to anything below 50, give me order number 1. Anything below 100K, give me order number 2. Everything else, give me order number 3. And then after that, I added the column. So here is where I will repeat myself again. I'm going to delete this one, okay? And I'm going to show you again from the start. This one, I'm just going to not have this, so I'm just going to put 0, okay? Let's just assume we are working with a whiteboard right now. So in order for us to understand what is today's date, the date today will be using datetime.local now. So I'm just going to copy this and then I'm going to paste it here and I'm going to show you this. This is equivalent to how you get today. So let me just give you a short comment here. Equivalent, by the way, for Power Query commenting is /, and then you will have it in green. You can type whatever you want without impacting the code. Right? Like something like SQL as well, you can do commenting. Python as well, you can use hash as for comment. That's the same way, so that you don't get lost. Equivalent to today function in Excel. Okay, so that's where we are. And then right now, I want to do another one. So let me just create another step right now. And the step here refers to the earlier one. So you can see comparison, right? I want to put date.year and wrap that output from the first step to now. So what I will get here is this 2025 because the date is 2025-04-10, and then this is the timestamp that when I run this, it was at 11:51, 56 seconds, 72 microseconds. Okay, so we only need to create year. We only need year to minus my age, to get my age. You need 2025 minus 1993, right? So what we do here, I'm just going to delete this one now and come back here and wrap this around date.year and close the bracket, and I will get 2025. So this one is similar to year today in Excel. Okay, so let me just copy paste this one over here for your reference. Okay, so this is equivalent to year to date in Excel. And this returns number, not date, as your result, data type. Okay, so that is what this means. So if we are following this logic, the year of today, and we need to get the year of the birth date of that person in our customer database, we come back here, and then after that we come to add column, custom column, same steps, don't worry, I will just insert this, right? And then I will call this age column, right? Big number, which is 2025 minus the birth year that you are born in. I'm just going to create this, okay? And then I'm going to minus off the year of that customer, which is birth date. Okay, maybe this is a bit too difficult for you to see right now, right? So what I will do, let me just delete this step and I will just create a few steps for you to see clearly. I'm sorry, because I am so used to this already. I tend to nest everything together. I forgot that this is a preview class. Okay, so what I'm just gonna say is year to date. Okay, today's year. So this is the exact same formula that we use. Date dot year. Okay, and I am going to change this to type number. Otherwise, you cannot do your mathematical operations later. This is year today, which is 2025. This one is something that we all are aware of already. Next, we go to get the year of the birth date, right? So we get to the year of our birth date is birth year. The function that we learned just now was date dot year. Date dot year, meaning to get the date, right? Returns the year component, right? So here I am getting birth date, close bracket, right? And then I am going to see the year coming up. So again, I'm just going to change this to type number, click OK. So you can see that this guy is born in 1971, 1976, 1973, etc., etc. Okay, so this is how we would do it in Excel. Now, what we do in Excel also is to get the age column, which is year to date 2025 minus your birth year equals your age. And I am going to change this again to type number. Okay, so this is what we are doing, but it is including so many steps. And the more steps you have means the more load you would have in the end, right? And we don't want that. So that's why we basically keep it short. So I'm just going to delete everything until the end. And then I am going to create custom function and call this as age. And then I am going to say date.year of this year minus date.year of my birthday and close bracket. And then I will immediately get the age. So what I'm going to do in the formula bar is to change this to type number, and our job is done. Now we are running short of time, so I will have to speed up a lot. So now I will close and load, and that's basically it. Now, this is in connection only. And I say, for example, want this to load as data model. I think it was who asked this question. So now I am putting this in data model. I do not want to load my Excel file up and have it too much size. So what I'm going to do next is coming over here to insert a pivot table. You will see this thing called from data model enable. So when I click this, I will say that I want it in the existing sheet. Pivot table one, my dim customer is ready. So I am just going to sort this by age, for example. I am just going to sort this by yearly income bin over here, right? And yearly income bin is a bit ugly right now. So I will show you later how do I sort them up. And maybe I just want to do a count of full name because I just want to see how many customers are there, for example, right? And here, obviously, this is very ugly because it should be 10 and then 50 and then 100. I think this is typo error. Never mind, let's just assume everything is okay. Let us go to the Power Pivot, which is here. In Power Pivot, we will click this, we will come to Manage, and then here is where I will do this, right? And then sort by column. Sort by column, there is this thing coming up right now. By column is the income bin sort. And then it is done. And then I will save, sorry, I will now see that this looks clean already. This is a typo error, so this is actually more than 100K. So that's how you play around with pivot table with whatever that you want to do, right? And that's basically the end of this Excel workbook. So I'm just gonna minimize all of this and then go into CSV. And in CSV is Titanic Passengers. So I am going to quickly bulldoze myself through by sharing with you how we can extract information from CSV file. Again, go to data, get data from file, from text and CSV, right? Now we are doing CSV. So here I will go to CSV Titanic Passengers. This is type CSV. Here you can see I will just import this. I will not load this really. So from here you can see that there are many types of delimiters that you can choose from. In this case, this is already comma separated. This is fine. And then right now we also see that sometimes when you download data, right, you would see that there are a lot of headers on the top here that you may not want. So you need to remove those. I'm purposely putting it here to show you what will happen when you download data from the systems as well. Okay. And next that you have is, again, click on transform data. I say always go to transform data. I have the first 4 columns that I don't want. So I will remove top rows. How do I get here? Is by home. This is your default landing tab of the ribbon. In home, come to remove rows, click remove rows, remove top rows. How many rows I want to be removed? The answer is 4 because 1, 2, 3, 4 is nothing. And then 5th column onwards is where I have my data header. So I'm just going to put 4 here and click OK. And then only I will choose, now where did it go? Use first row as header. Yes, exactly here, right? It is here in home, use first row as header. I will click this and it will again give me that function that I need, which is great. Now, what happens here is we would also need to create other things in this data file. I'm sorry that I did not walk you guys through in this step by step because we have already covered that kind of mentality that you would need to have when you're solving problems. In this, the query plan is to create alias for the names in parentheses, right? You have parentheses here. And I want this to be an alias, Mrs. James Wilkes. The alias in another column will be Alan Meads, right? So this one, we are using another function called split column by delimiter, which I will show you later. Create salutation from name. You have got Mr., Mrs., etc. We want to create that from the name. And then after that, you will create full name using last name plus first name. For example, Kelly Kelly, comma, Mr. James will be James Kelly, right? This one, I will want it to be James Kelly as my name, okay? Maybe that might be a bit too complicated for me to explain the entire process, which we may not have enough time to cover this. So what will happen is maybe I'm just gonna extract the Mr. and Mrs. out since that we only have like less than an hour to go, okay? And then the next thing that we have to do is rename SIP SP to siblings or spouse. We have this one, we will rename this. Parch is parent child, change data types where applicable, etc. Right? So over here, what we're going to do, maybe I will just share with you the query plan first. Yep, I will explain your question later on as well. So in this column, in this, right, what we are going to have is first we are renaming column names. Just double click this, and then we say that we are changing sib_sp to sibling/spouse. So we are going to do exactly just that, sibling/spouse. Okay, and then parch is basically parent/child, basically telling you how many parents or child is on board together with the customer. So we are done with that. And then we also have to replace miss dot to ms. Let us just quickly check. Do we have that or do we not? Maybe, yes, we do. I saw this, miss dot Elizabeth to ms dot. So we are then going to replace miss, right? So how do we do that? Is by right clicking and then replace value. I have miss dot and I want to change this to miss ms dot, and I will click OK. And then it will already change. So you see this miss Ida to ms dot Ida, right? So in this, what do we need to do next is also to create salutation from names. The salutation is in the middle, which is a little bit difficult, but still can be done somehow. I will quickly go through this. Quite a rare situation, but just to get a hang of it on how things work. And I will, of course, go in a lot deeper when it comes to our full day course in the training. Right. So what I'm going to do is add column, and then I am going to extract. I am going to extract, right, the text after delimiter, and the delimiter is comma. So that is my first step. So whatever here is always the last name, comma, and then your salutation, dot, and then after that your first name. So with this, we are sure that comma space will be the delimiter that will give me the second half of the name text. So I will do that. And then now you don't see it, obviously, because this is a new text, new column. This is now called as text as delimiter. All right. So now we have so many things here, right? And we only need to get the salutation before the dot. Now, instead of add column, I will come to transform and extract the text before delimiter. And my delimiter is dot, right? Because I don't need your K, Albert, Joseph, John, Yailo, Leo, whatever, Benjamin. I don't need that anymore because this is my salutation column. I will click OK, and now the entire thing is cleaned up. So I can choose to change this to salutation like this, right? But I don't want to create another unnecessary step here. So when I am inserting text after delimiter, I will immediately call this, you see here, this one in red, I will just call this as salutation. And of course, this will break because there is no such column anymore. I'm just going to rename this as salutation as well so that they can recognize what steps are they in. And we are done. Okay, this is now cleaned up. And that's pretty much what I want to show you based on how much time we have left right now, right? To just give you a big idea, right, of what you can do in Power Query just on your own without going through and involving other departments. You can rename things, etc. Next thing I am going to do is on consolidating data very quickly on this is on merging. So merging, sorry, this is something that I will need to show my screen a little bit. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 types of joins in Power Query, right? And in these types of joins, there are certain use cases of when you use what. But most of the time, as data professionals, we tend to use the ones that are on the left more than the right. So we don't need right outer, we don't need right empty. Quite rare that we will use that. Okay, very, very rare. So we would normally use left outer, meaning to say combine all the things from the left and find whatever that you have on the right table, basically your lookup table, right? And then if you don't have that, return NA, it's fine. Okay, full outer is basically join two tables together. If you don't have, then create a separate line. right? And then inner is basically only those that will give you results you will show, and then remove all the NAs when you are doing your VLOOKUP formula. Okay, and basically that's that. And then we are going to proceed with the next exercise again, spanning from here, right? To load the survival dataset and merge using passenger ID. So this is how we do VLOOKUP in Excel, right? Sorry, in Power Query. What I will do next is I will come here, right click, new query, file, CSV. I know where it is already. Let me see if I have it. I didn't have it. Interesting. Is it here? Yes, it's here. Merge query Titanic survival, import. Right? I already have this. I will click OK. This is as CSV file. I will then come here and use first row as header. I want to see whether you survive or not in the Titanic crash, right? So from here, what I will do is merge query. Merge query is VLOOKUP. Just remember that, okay? And how do I remember merge and append? Very simple. Append looks like an Eiffel Tower. The word A, the letter A looks like an Eiffel Tower. So it is combining top and bottom together, right? Merge looks like a bridge. A bridge is a VLOOKUP. That's how I remember. So I have choices to do merge query or merge query as new. If I click merge query as new, means there is another table that will be loaded. Maybe that's something that is easier because I want to keep track of my work progress. I want to keep track of my jalan kerja. So I will merge query as new, and it will later be called as append one. Right? Titanic passenger and merge query Titanic survival. I have passenger ID here. I have passenger ID here. I can choose left outer. I can choose inner join. It doesn't matter because it says here selection matches 408 of 408, meaning 100% match. I will click OK, and then you see merge one appears already. This is a new query that is created when you click merge query as new. Scroll all the way to the end and you will see this one coming up. I want to see whether they survive or not, which is your zeros and ones that I showed you earlier. I will disable this. I will also disable use original column name as prefix because I don't want them to say merge query Titanic survival dot survival ID. I don't want that, right? Sorry, not survival ID is survived, right? I don't want that. So this one, I will click disable and I will click OK. And then I will see my zeros and one already appear, right? So from here, again, what I will do and what can I do is close and load. You will see that all of these are connection only. And again, this one is something I want to load into my data model so I can play around with pivot to identify your salutation and your gender, etc. That one we will discuss more in our full day training class, right? But pretty much right now, just a quick summary. How many survive and how many not? 0 is they did not survive. 1 is they survive. Okay. So now again, in this I have already loaded. So we see here 418 rows that is loaded. I will come to insert power pivot, pivot table and from data model. I will click OK. And then this is my table, right? And in my table, I will choose maybe my sex, right? And then after that, survival rate, maybe my column. And I'm just going to count the passenger ID. So that's your conclusion of this whole exercise, that you have 206 all men perish and all females survive. Basically, that is what it means, right? That is what this pivot table does. When you are loading this into your data model, you can play around with your pivot table. Now, I'm going back to Yap's question. Grateful if you can spare a few minutes. What I mean is today I load in this table, tomorrow I have a new data. How does this get refreshed? So now that we are done with all of these things, let me quickly walk you guys through on how does that get done, right? Since we still have some time before Q&A, so I'm just going to spend this 15 minutes to answer some technical questions and then the remaining half an hour for you to have more Q&As and for, of course, for Jambrain proven to wrap up this whole seminar as well, right? I have one module here called from folder in Olympics, right? In Olympics, we have about 4 years every time, right? And now you can relate this situation to something else as well. I am not going into that too much in depth on how do you do your codes, but I will show you that it is possible since the question is how does this get refreshed, right? So now we have this here and all of this, right? Let's inspect the data. We have got ranking, we have country, gold, silver, bronze, and total by the year, right? And of course, we need the year as well later on, which is where we can use the file name as our indicator. Now, again, going back to Excel, this is where earlier I say that we are going to get data from folder, which is right here, right? From folder, I am going to choose my, I think it's module 3 from folder. Of course, when you click inside folder, you do not see anything anymore because there is no more folders after Olympics. And you only need to go until Olympics because we are reading folder. We are no longer reading Excel file. That's why there is no Excel files there because right now your connector is from folder. Click open. Here is where you have all your names, right? I click transform data, right? This is not, I mean, you can do this using your normal approach by letting the program run, but I tend to have issues with that as I work with big data. So what do I do now is, this is where I said about Excel.workbook and Excel.current workbook. So here is where I'll briefly walk you guys through so you can read this up later on your own. My normal steps that I deal with big number of Excel files is to get data. How do I get data is I invoke a function called Excel.workbook. My first argument is my content, which is in binary file. Binary file is basically just your file, okay, your Excel file. And then I will say true meaning to say automatically promote header or not. My answer is yes, I want to automatically promote header and later you can automatically combine everything without me going through everything every single day. So I will click OK, right? Now, when I click OK, I have a table here, a table of tables. So bear with me on this. What does it mean? This is a metadata. Whatever that you see right here is a metadata, meaning to say the characteristics of the file that you have. And in here, what I do always is to, again, disable this. This is like sort of my muscle memory already. I will disable original column name as prefix and I will click OK. And then I have a lot of, wait, something is not right here. Okay, this is okay. Sorry. Yeah, here is where all these things come up, right? Here, I will just make sure that everything is sheet. Everything is called sheet 1. Table. Now this makes sense. This is what I want, right? I want to combine all of this together. So what I do next, basically, is to then combine all of this together. I can do it several ways. So maybe I'll do a simple way for you guys to follow through. I will choose columns. I will get the name of the file, and then I will get the data. Okay, because I want to know what year it is, ma. So sometimes you also want to know what is the file name that you are putting in. Since you are putting in 365 days of file, you want to identify where got problem, example. So file name here basically refers to your Excel file name, hence you have SLSX. Doesn't matter, it's good for you to know that you are having the right format in your flow. Otherwise, things will break on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is very simple. Here, I will basically just say expand all, right? When I expand all, then I have column 7, column 8. What is this? We do not have time to go through in depth on that, unfortunately, right? So what I'm going to do, very quick fix, is to delete this. And then after that, all of this, right? Again, you have a lot of ABC 1, 2, 3. Why? Because the data that is provided to you is a table range. It is not a table type in Excel that can automatically detect the data data type when you are uploading it into your Power Query. So what we have to do right now is to click on transform detect data type, job is done, right? And then after that, I'm going to close and load. Just for the sake of demonstration, I am going to load this as a table and bloat the entire thing up. From here, I can see 4 years. Clear? So assuming right now we have, this is done like 4 months now, right? Because Jan to April. Let's just assume this is January monthly report, etc. until end of April monthly report. And then today is the 2nd of May that you have to start work. You need to download things. Sorry, assume that today is the end of May, that you have to download all of your May reports, right? And then you need to run this file. So how do you do that? Very simple. I said we have already connected this to a folder and not an Excel file. So what happens is, as long as your folder has the name and structure of your file that is in this folder earlier on, right? This one, 2004 medals have the exact same structure as 2004, 2008, 2012. Now this is example 2016, and I will purposely call this example. Okay, don't need to do anything, and I will show you a magic trick that I have saved so much of my time. Okay, done. This is a new file that I put in. Every morning I wake up, drink my coffee, download report SAP, put it in. Now, what I do is I click refresh. Earlier on, I said there is refresh. I come to the data, okay? Data, come here to refresh. I click refresh, done. Okay, it will turn a bit. Now I will see 2016 is here. That is how you are updating every day's file for your work operations. I'm surprised that I managed to complete this in 5 minutes. Is there any questions, so that we have about like 10 more minutes for me to walk you guys through a bit slower? If you need me to, please comment down below. So like what I shared with you as well, right? The purpose of you joining this seminar, this webinar, is for you to get an idea. It's not a full day training where I dig deep into every single thing. Since again, I'm sorry that I got too excited that I spoke 1 hour, and then after that, some of my friends say, hey, Alex, I'm here not to share you past stories. I'm here to learn from you. So here we are to share you and demonstrate to you what are the common things that you can get from just using Power Query, right? And in Power Query as such, you can already do so many things. Julia, so if we fix the record in Excel in folder, it will be synchronized when refreshed, right? The answer is yes. If you are synchronizing it into your C drive, then it will be in your C drive. Once you put it in, immediately you can start refreshing because there is no delay in your PC. If you are syncing this into SharePoint, you may need to wait a few minutes, assuming that you are working on operational SAP reports in finance that is bloody long list. I'm sorry for my language. There's 100 over 1,000. That one you may need to wait, because when you download SAP, right, you may have like 50 over columns over there on, and you may not need everything, but you still have to wait. That is the raw data that is given to you. You cannot get IT to customize the base table or T code for you to run certain things for your work, right? But I think you can still run based on certain variants of the reports that you can download. So that's somewhat save you from downloading and waiting for too much of these downloads to happen. To be safe, if you're doing this in SharePoint, it is similar approach, but the code will then be from SharePoint, which is going to be here from SharePoint folder. You need to put in your root folder. You need to navigate in. So this is a little bit of extra steps involved, but pretty much you can still get your work done. I hope that answers your question, be it online or offline. Data syncing processes for you to compile your data on a daily basis. All right, good. If there is no more questions, I'm just going to wait for about 2 minutes here until 25. And then I'm going to share 5 minutes, right? My last 5 minutes with all of you, some questions that I have drafted. Singh is asking, is there any simple way for us to copy paste and edit SQL script in Excel P? Power Query like old Excel version format. You can. In fact, that is where you would have to go into database, right? And then this database, you can select whatever database in here. And then from here, you can choose what is the server that you are connected to, what database that you're connected to, and your SQL statement. You can copy paste your SQL statement and put it here. And then it will load you the table exactly as how you would when you are running your SQL in Microsoft MS SQL or whatever other versions that you're running in. I hope that answers your question, Singh. How important is Power Query in overall data analytics career path, and how does mastering it compare to learning tools like SQL or Python? Some of you may definitely be asking, like myself as well. SQL, Python, etc. Do I need to learn? The answer is it depends. If you don't need it, you really don't need to spend too much time. Like I don't cut fish. I don't use sushi. I don't do sushi. I don't need to have a sushi knife in my kitchen. Although yes, it looks nice, but I don't need it. Neither do I have the time to actually learn something like cutting sushi or sashimi. So that's how it is. But learning general knife skills definitely would help. So this is my advice to this kind of question will always be get your foundation super solid in Excel first. And then after that, if you want to explore further, you can explore SQL, because that is how I chart my course. I learned SQL, and then after SQL, I went into Python. So there are always use cases of one over the other. It is never to say that Python is the best and Excel is it. We have heard enough of this doomsayers in LinkedIn as much as my page is concerned, right? So I would not do that. May you share all the data set and files that you use as examples? Unfortunately, Hong, this is a webinar, not a training, so we will not be sharing this, but I believe the recording will be shared to everyone who has participated today. And then real-world applications, real-world examples and projects that I have done would be whatever that I've shared with you before. So I would not want to cover too much on that. But how do companies typically integrate Power Query into their data workflow? This question depends, right? If you want to integrate this, therefore you will be in your data team. If you want to do it for your own learning, to save your own time, then it would be your own work, in your own workflow, like how I saved half of my day. Every day I remember after everything was optimized in Coke, after 2 p.m. I am so free I can start playing my game every day. I felt so bad at that point of time. Yeah. So it really depends on how integrated your company IT data strategy is. So that is a whole different topic to cover altogether. Next interesting topic that I want to cover in the last 2 minutes, job market trend. Is there a growing demand for professionals with Power Query skills, especially in the data analyst or BI space? I would say not a growing demand to know Power Query, but definitely a demand that you see a lot in LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever. They would want you to have high proficiency in Excel. They would want you to know how to use Power BI. So Power Query is like the unsung hero of Power BI and Excel that helps you deliver value to the end users, right? That definitely helps you save time, therefore giving you an added advantage in your career progression as well. If I want to specialize in Power Query and related technologies, are there specific certifications? The answer is yes. You can go for specific certifications like Excel. Excel, you have beginner, intermediate, and advanced Excel certificates that you can take from Microsoft. You also have Power BI that will challenge you on some topics relating Power Query, but there is no one module of there is no one module of Power Query module itself in the examination. Okay. So I hope that would answer some of the questions as well. What else can I have? I think the most exciting one in my last 1 minute here is very exciting. Salary. How does expertise in Power Query impact salary expectation or career advancement in this analytics field? I would say it does not impact directly because I'll share with you. I was a chartered accountant in SEMA and I have revoked my membership because I don't see that one title, CGMA, ACMA, giving me a bump in my salary. They are more interested to understand your competency, right? With that is where how you would then be able to understand the more you know is what determines your understanding in your career trajectory and therefore your salary. That is my last statement. And going back to Singh's question, how to edit or change SQL script directly in Excel Power Query instead of going through applied steps. You still have to go through applied steps and you still have to click on that source gear icon, right? And from there, you can edit it there. But I strongly advise against that because you will not have that syntax and IntelliSense as you would in your IDE when you are working in your SQL scripting. So what I normally do, my approach, right, is to always copy paste the code into my IDE, integrated data and data environment, right? For me to play around with whatever that I need to, and then make sure that the output is what I need in SQL, SQL, BigQuery or whatever, because I can immediately see and it's very clear for me that way. Because when you put this into, when you want to inspect these elements in Power Query, it is actually a little bit slow. So I would always advise to edit in an IDE first, test the data is correct, and then copy paste and replace the existing code through the interface that I showed you. When you click on that icon later on, you will see that advanced option where you wrote your SQL script earlier. You just delete that and paste in your new code and then run as usual. I hope that answers that question as well. What is the IDE you are referring to? You can talk about Visual Studio. You can talk about Notepad. Notepad plus is not an IDE. Yeah, Visual Studio is is an IDE. Or if you don't have an IDE, MS SQL, immediately you can already log in and run your SQL code on that database. Google BigQuery and whatsoever other databases. What do you call it? MariaDB. The other Dolphin, I cannot remember, MySQL, etc. Yeah, SSMS is also part of it.